Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Naruto went back in time to stop Madara. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. He slides through the darkness of gnarled trees and jutting rocks, barely half a shadow in the gloom. There is no moon there hasn't been in a very long time, but shinobi eyes are more than capable of using the cold light of the stars. By their glow, it's simple enough to pick his way around and over the well-hidden traps scattered throughout the clearing's edge. They are deadly, all of them, because they lost the luxury of mercy years ago. The amplification seals are in place, he says, slipping over a jagged boulder and landing lightly in front of his partner. With your genjutsu, that should be enough to hold them off for at least a day, probably more. Sasuke coughs, deep and racking, but nods. Surroundings, he rasps, and his voice is rough and his breathing labored from a recent fit. Naruto closes his eyes, not so much to shut out the fact that Sasuke is dying, but to strangle the despair that's rising up inside him. They're the last of the Konoha shinobi, maybe the last living souls in the land of fire. Madara's been thorough. Clear, is all he says, though, taking a seat beside the Ucha and watching him pull himself upright with worried eyes. You're fine, Sasuke finishes, because after so many years they're all but sharing brainwaves. Not that the question is so hard to guess, given their situation. He leans back against the boulder behind them, clearly exhausted, but reaches out to wrap a hand around the back of Naruto's neck and drag him closer. Naruto goes with it, not about to resist, and he lets himself fall all but boneless against Sasuke's strong chest, pressing his forehead into the other man's shoulder. Slim, deft fingers thread through his long hair, tugging lightly, and then still. It's almost time, Sasuke says, and for once his voice is nearly gentle. Naruto keeps his eyes closed and doesn't move. He knows, he's known for weeks now, but that doesn't make it any easier to accept. This is a one-way ticket for only one person, and as much as Naruto would like to argue that Sasuke should be the one to go, he knows better. That kind of foolish, heroic naivety was what got Sakura killed. Apparently fed up with his silence, and isn't that irony, the BSD Sasuke yanks on his hair, making him yelp. I said. I heard you, team, Naruto hisses, jerking back to glare at his best friend. He almost loses a chunk of scalp in the process, but Sasuke doesn't relinquish his grip and Naruto doesn't move far enough away to make him. His expression settles, anger fading, and he lowers his eyes. And, I know it is. But I still think. Chindobi. But Sasuke's red and black eyes are warm in a way they only rarely are. I thought I warned you about that and how it overtaxes your brain. Naruto makes a face at him, because end of the world or no, childishness is pretty much always satisfying. Oh, funny. But, he trails off, not meeting Sasuke's gaze, and then says softly, Is this really our best option? Yes, Sasuke answers. Instantly. He reaches out again, pulling Naruto closer, until their foreheads are resting together and their breath mingles, warm in the cooling night air. We've already gone over this, Naruto. You know it is. What is this about? Naruto hesitates, because he knows Sasuke will call him a moron for this, and while that's hardly a new thing, right now he doesn't want to hear it. He looks up, meets Sasuke's level eyes, and tries for a smile even though he knows it falls very far short. A sweep of his hand takes in the small clearing, the two of them pressed so close they might as well be sharing a heartbeat. This, he whispers, and it's jagged. Naruto's lived a while now, longer than he ever expected to. Certainly, but he has never, ever been able to want anything, have it, and then keep it. Us, he finally manages. If I go back, if I change everything, then this has already happened, Sasuke interrupts inexorably. His free hand slides around Naruto's side, up the line of his back to curl around his neck again, his other still twined in deep garnet hair. But his eyes are resigned, as much as he tries to hide it, sad though there's a hint of wry humor there as well. You're going back to change the future, Naruto. Our past has already happened. The timelines will split. We've gone over the theory enough for you to know this. We can't change what's already happened, but you can change what will happen. It's always going to be there. But I've got 2 days left, 3 at the very most, and I'm not going to leave you alone in this hell when there's a way to fix it. Naruto smiles at him, small and sad. No one would ever believe me if I told them the great Uchiha Sasuke was a closet romantic, he jokes, but the lines in his face have eased a bit, and he breathes out as he leans forward, gently pressing his lips to Sasuke's pale throat. Sasuke chuckles, even as his fingers wind more deeply into long tresses and tug the other man closer still. No one, he agrees, looking down at the man in his arms. He pulls gently, dragging Naruto against his chest once more. Burying his face in silken red strands, he breathes out a long, quiet sigh and then says, apropos of nothing, I miss your blonde hair. It's Naruto's turn to laugh, muffled as it is by Sasuke's shirt. You and me both, he offers in amusement. I spent 24 years of my life blonde, before the stupid fox decided to go all noble on me. He picks up a lock of hair and surveys it with bemusement, then lets it fall with a shrug and rests his cheek on Sasuke's shoulder again. But at least I won't have to use a henge once I'm back. With the Hyuga still alive, that would just be asking for trouble. Sasuke rolls his eyes at his friend's incredibly awful planning skills, but says nothing. As bad as he is at strategy, Naruto's always been brilliant at tactics, and with Sasuke helping him plan out his return, things should go at least a little more smoothly than they otherwise would. At the thought of what's coming, Sasuke closes his eyes and tightens his arms just a bit. He knows his own expiration date is rapidly approaching, but knowing is different than accepting. Far different than liking. Naruto has been his rock for years now, a safe harbor in the storm of war their land has fallen to, and Sasuke doesn't believe it's hubris to think has been the same for Naruto. And now Sasuke is going to cast him away to the tides, send him spinning through places no human, Jinchuriki or otherwise, was ever meant to go. Alone, without allies, facing some of the most dangerous people in any world, and there's nothing more he can do to help. They've prepared and planned and schemed and made arrangements for the worst-case scenario. But all of that only goes so far, especially when Naruto will be alone in what is essentially enemy territory for as long as it takes to complete the first stages. But for the moment, at least, there's nothing between them, not even air, and Sasuke curls around his partner, his best friend, his lover as much as he can, holds him tightly and wonders just how long the world will let them stay like this. Not long enough, never long enough, but they'll have to make do. You'll save me, right? Him, he whispers, suddenly insecure, adrift. We, all of us could have been so much more. What we became wasn't what we were meant to be. You'll fix it, won't you? Naruto breathes out against his skin, warm, damp, and faintly laughing. Of course, he says, twisting his head to look up at Sasuke with one ocean blue eye. At least those are the same, even if his hair has changed and the whisker marks are long since vanished. I know I'm going back to save the world, but our team is a huge part of that. Just think of it, what we could have been. The next coming of the Sannin, Sasuke finishes with some feeling between amusement and resignation. As long as you don't turn into Jiraiya. As long as you don't turn into Orochimaru, Naruto retorts, but his gaze is unwavering as he meets Sasuke's eyes. Don't worry, Sasuke. I won't let it happen again. Naruto's word is worth everything in the crumbling world, and Sasuke nods, just once. He tips his head back, checking the position of the stars, and then murmurs, Naruto. With a soft sigh, Naruto pulls back, if only a little. He follows Sasuke's gaze and nods, expression resigned. Yeah, I know. Then he leans forward, and Sasuke meets him halfway in a slow, careful kiss, the goodbye they'll never be able to speak out loud, the tears that will never be shed for a loss they've both helped to orchestrate. Naruto's mouth is warm and soft under his, and Sasuke tastes the sweetness of the apples they had for dinner. Naruto wraps an arm around his shoulders, pressing close again, and it's the work of half a moment for Sasuke to topple them to the ground. Naruto arches up as the other man settles on top of him, still taller and heavier even after so many years. And though he's not quite sure who initiated it, the kiss is desperate now, sharp and carelessly hungry when they've both kept themselves tightly controlled in every aspect of their lives for so long now. But he buries his fingers in raven hair, ghosts over smooth, pale skin, and tries not to cry when Sasuke pulls away, breathing hard and eyes gone dark and somber. Always, Koi, he murmurs, ghosting one more quick kiss across Naruto's lips, and Naruto feels his heart clench, because Sasuke never uses that endearment. Hell, the closest they ever usually come to endearments is Team and Dobi. 3 times that Naruto can remember the word Koi has passed Sasuke's lips, and every time it's been the nearest to death they've ever come. Here, now, death isn't so much a chance as a certainty, and Naruto closes his eyes and fights not to give in to grief. Always, he answers, whisper soft and more heartfelt than any word he can remember speaking previously. I'll never. No, Sasuke cuts in, and the desolation is entirely gone, banished by the raging, furious fire that sprung up in his eyes. No, Naruto, don't you dare promise me that. You deserve to find someone else, to feel this again. It won't be me, it won't be the same, but swear you'll let yourself. Swear, Naruto. Naruto meets his sharp gaze, sees the determination there, and knows that in this at least he will never win. So he gives in with a crooked smile, dipping his head and murmuring, I swear, Sasuke, if there's ever anyone else, I'll try. But you're. Sasuke's eyes soften, and he tips forward to knock their foreheads together again. I know, he whispers in response. I know, but, try. They both understand, because it's something they'd both ask of the other and fail at doing for themselves, no matter how situations played out. Love is a fierce and formidable thing, at least in parting, and the grief of lost romantic love is something neither of them has had to endure before. Sasuke's will be over shortly. He can feel his life seeping away, the clock running down on his time here, but Naruto will have to endure and survive, alone in a land that's become strange to him. I will, Naruto repeats, shutting away the thought of another lifetime without Sasuke, a very long life, after Kurama's sacrifice. Also pushed back is the knowledge that Sasuke will be left here to die alone, kamikaze mission or no. He'll drop the genjutsu hiding them as soon as he's ready, and then wait for Madara's forces to find him. There are suicide seals everywhere in the clearing, just waiting for the trigger word to activate, and then it will be done. Always, he repeats, stealing another butterfly brief kiss before getting his feet under him and rising. Sasuke rises with him, even though he wavers on his feet as a harsh, hacking cough tears through him, and together they drag out a huge, heavy scroll and unroll it across the middle of the small open area. The lines of the seal seem to glimmer even in the darkness. Sking in the light and holding it. It's by far the most complex seal Naruto has ever made, almost a year of constant work in one length of heavy canvas. Each line is perfect, checked over countless times and tweaked until the whole thing resonates with contained power, even before activation. They lay it out beneath the darkened sky, and then step back into the silence, because this is the moment. This is the last, the end, the step beyond the edge and out into a new beginning. Only one of them will be making the trip. Naruto huffs out a heavy breath and then looks up, meeting Sasuke's dark eyes with something terribly close to despair. He doesn't say anything, but he doesn't need to. Sasuke's eyes reflect the same, because beginnings or no, this is also most certainly an end. In less than a quarter of an hour, the stars will be in position, ready to amplify the power called, and Naruto's seal will come to life with a single drop of blood, carrying him away forever. Sasuke reaches out with a hand that doesn't tremble, cups Naruto's cheek and traces every line of his face. The Sharingan means he doesn't have to work to memorize his partner's features, but he does anyway, consciously committing every detail to memory. It's a beautiful face, strong and entirely matured from the roundness of childhood, lean from years of hard living and scarred from war. Even the Kyuubi couldn't heal everything, at points, and it's left a patchwork of scars on Naruto's skin. The long red hair, as deep and dark as a garnet, falls loosely around his face, having long since come free from its usual tail, and Sasuke runs a hand through it wistfully. Not blonde, even though the sunshine gold hair so perfectly suited Naruto's personality. But still Naruto's, and that's enough to make it dear. There's a single thin braid hanging down beside Naruto's face, and Sasuke touches it regretfully, remembering the long, slow night that they took for themselves once the seal was finally complete. One night where they threw thoughts of safety and concealment and vigilance to the wind, indulging, and only a slim plait bound with black and red silk and a lingering ache in both their bodies to remember it by. Keep this, he asks before he can stop himself. Just this one. For me, he doesn't have to say, because Naruto knows, will understand better than anyone else ever could. Naruto's hand comes up, covering his, and tightening their fingers around the slender twist of hair. Always, he says, his oath given once again, but this time with a smile, with his entire heart in his eyes. Sasuke, everything. It's always been yours. We've remade each other so many times since we first met, and like you said, it's already happened. Nothing will ever change it. Even if I find someone else, even if I don't, you'll have already had all of me. Sasuke knows that, of course, has known it for years. But hearing it spoken like that, so simply and certainly, is a balm to a wound he hadn't even recognized as such. He leans in again, brushes a kiss over the back of Naruto's hand where their fingers are still entwined, over Naruto's forehead half hidden by his bright dark hair, and then over his lips again, lingering and soft. One last kiss, and Naruto answers it with everything. Give and take, and they've always been equals, no matter his delusions as a child. Naruto is half of him, light to his dark, gold to his pale, quicksilver to his calm. Every sun needs a shadow, and every shadow needs a sun, and they balance each other like this. They always have, even in the times they didn't want to admit it. Go, Sasuke breathes against his lips, because if Naruto doesn't leave now, Sasuke is aware he never will. They'll hesitate and hope for another way until the stars fall out of alignment, and then everything will be lost. There are no choices here, no other paths they can take that end in a better future. This is their only chance, and neither of them can waste it. I love you, Naruto whispers back, barely a breath. They don't say it often, twice, 3 times, maybe, but that's all right, because it's always been understood. He takes a step away and squares his shoulders, striding forward to stand in the very center of the seal. Starlight glints off dagger-sharp claws as he lifts his hand, blood splattering from a slit wrist. Sasuke winces at the deep wound, life-threatening on anyone else, but Naruto's face is calm and set, not quite at peace but not entirely far off from it, either. The seal starts to glow, rippling with blue and violet chakra, shining like a beacon in the darkness. The seals on Naruto's arms echo it, glittering and sparking, and for a moment he is a creature of light, suspended in the shadows. Sasuke catches his breath one last chance, one last time, just once more, and takes a step forward, right to the edge of the scroll. Naruto opens eyes that glow deep violet, and smiles at him, sharp white teeth flashing and expression fierce. Sasuke meets the grin with one of his own. Always, Koi, he says again, knowing Naruto will hear it even over the snap and crackle of building power as the stars creep into alignment. I love you. Naruto's eyes meet his and hold, steady and strong, and there's a world of words there that neither of them has ever needed to speak. They don't need to speak them now, because one look is enough. It holds for a single, endless moment, and then Naruto's hands flicker through 3 hand seals and the light is gone. The seal is gone. Naruto is gone. Sasuke takes a step back, the sudden lack like ashes on his tongue, and then breathes out. They're lucky, really. So few in this time have ever gotten such a chance to say goodbye. Farewells are another luxury lost to war, abandoned along with mercy and justice and anything beyond kill, protect, avenge, defeat, survive. But not for long, if this plan succeeds. Never again, if Naruto keeps his word, and Sasuke knows he will, the same way he knows the sun will rise and the tide will pull and he will die. There is simply no other option. Their farewell will linger, will remain, and Sasuke takes comfort in it, even as he settles back against a boulder and folds his hands into a ram seal. Kai, he murmurs, and feels the genjutsu that's been concealing them, reflected and amplified by Naruto seals until not even Madara himself can sense it, shatter and fall to pieces. He makes himself comfortable, readying the trigger word in his mind to be spoken on a moment's notice, and prepares himself for a wait. Not long now, he thinks, and with Naruto gone, forever lost to him, he cannot bring himself to truly mind. He will face his death here when Madara comes for him, comes for his eyes, or he will meet it before the sun rises 3 times, and use his own passing to trigger the suicide seals and keep Madara from ever gaining his Sharingan. Either way, they've won. The Jounin standby station is sparsely populated, a handful of shinobi lounging on the couches or huddled in groups, speaking in low voices. Kakashi is perched on one arm of the sofa, hiding from Gai in the last place Konoha's green beast will ever look, knowing as he does Kakashi's antisocial tendencies. But Gai always underestimates Kakashi's drive to avoid his stupid challenges, and now is no different. He's got his book, his temporary peace, and all is right with the world. Genma is watching him from the other end of the couch, senbon rolling between his teeth and expression entertained. Kakashi reading porn in public has never failed to amuse the other man, and now seems to be no different. I heard you got tapped as a sensei again, the Tokubetsu Jounin says lazily. Gonna keep reading that in front of them? Kakashi manages to pull his eye away from the book long enough to fix Genma with a cool stare. Why would I stop? He asks disinterestedly, and turns a page. Genma rolls his eyes at him, but is still grinning. I don't know. Last time they asked me to take a team there was this whole long lecture about me not corrupting their innocent minds with my manware ways. Yeah, but you're not Kakashi, Reidu puts in from the other couch, where he's got a pile of paperwork spread out. He doesn't look up, even as he tacks on, and they only asked you because they were desperate and knew you'd fail the brats. How long did they last in your test again? 12 minutes. 8, Genma corrects with a smirk. Not my fault they couldn't make the cut. Both Kakashi and Reidu level a look at the Takujo, who despite his lazy air is one of Tandai's best interrogators, and one of the village's best assassins. His particular skill set would be enough to give a hardy Chunan nightmares, let alone a handful of green genin. There's a reason not even Kakashi has asked what test exactly he gave the kids. Some things even shinobi are better off not knowing. Just then, the door blows open with a sharp bang and rebounds off the wall, though it doesn't quite dare to hit the man making his way through. Kakashi turns his head to watch Ibiki scatter Jounin left and right as he makes his way to the couches. He's scowling fiercely, even more so than normal, and Kakashi arches a brow. Ouch, Reidu murmurs lowly. Think Anko did something? That's not an Anko frown, Genma points out, and then raises his voice. Everything all right, Ibiki? The big man changes course without so much as a hesitation, dropping down across Kakashi with a sharp huff. He scatters a handful of forms across the low table and growls, someone just claimed the bounty on Sazori of the Red Sand. The senbon drops from Genma's mouth, and he only just catches it before it hits the floor. What? He manages after a stunned second. But yesterday, didn't? Ibiki nods, rubbing a hand over his bandana. Yeah, he agrees grimly. Kakashi looks between the two of them for a moment, and then asks airily, anyone want to fill in those of us who don't live in the Tandai basement? Genma flicks a hand at the papers Ibiki dropped. There's been a wave of bounties being claimed in all of the elemental countries these past few months. Not small ones, either Deidara of Iwa, Hoshigaki Kism of Kiri, and Kakuzu of Taki. All S-rank missing nin, and all rumored to be part of the same organization. I'd say someone's got a grudge. Bodies found, too, Ibiki puts in. Haiden, formerly of Yugakure, was chopped into pieces and buried. His head was dropped off to claim the bounty, still talking. The Chunan at the desk were told not to worry, that he'd starve to death eventually. Reidu blanches at that, just slightly. DMN, he murmurs. Kakashi agrees. Shinobi have a lot of insane talents, but near immortality seems like a mixed blessing in that case. Then he pauses as something occurs to him. Claimed. A wave, he repeats slowly, looking up at the head of Tandai, by the same person? All of them? There's a quick glance from Genma, but Ibiki ignores it as he slumps back in his seat and nods grudgingly. Yes, he affirms, mouth twisting. It could be a grin or a grimace with him, Kakashi can't quite tell. A man with red hair, wearing an Yuzushio Hitaiate. Kakashi stills, because even now Yuzushio Gakure only means one thing to him and coupled with red hair, it means even more. You're sure? He asks roughly, not even bothering to try for disinterest. Yuzushio? Definitely. I wouldn't trust the reports from Iwa or Kiri, Ibiki answers, but soon as an ally, however tentative, and this comes from a solid source. If he says it's an Yuzushio Hitaiate, it is. Heart in his throat, Kakashi hops off the arm of the couch and waves distractedly, already making for the door at a just barely polite speed. Then he's on the rooftops and hightailing it for the Hokage's office with hardly a thought. Kushina, he thinks desperately, and while he knows it can't be her, knows she died that night and that her name is engraved on the memorial stone beside his sensei's, there's a flicker of something in his chest that he can't quite quell, a flare of hope that even if Kushina is gone, her clan still exists. The Uzumaki were long-lived, after all, strong in spirit and body, and there's always a chance. He leaps through the window and only just manages to find his footing in time to keep from stumbling or falling on his nose, then spins to face the Hokage. The Sandaime is watching him with one brow raised, expression politely attentive despite the suspicious twitch to one side of his mouth. "Ah, Kakashi," he says, and then glances at the clock. "Dare I say you're even early? I just sent out a message 2 minutes ago." Were this even slightly less important, Kakashi would pause to mourn the death of his previously unbroken tardy streak, but this is about an Uzumaki, so he stuffs that bit of woe down deep in his psyche and blurts, "Hokage-sama, the bounty's that." "Yes, exactly why I wish to speak with you," the Hokage interrupts smoothly. "There are still a few weeks until the academy graduation and you being called upon as an instructor. In that time, I would like you to track down this Uzushio nin and offer him Konoha's hand of friendship. There has long been an alliance between our villages, and even if Uzushio is no more, I would like to honor the tradition. There's also the fact that if this shinobi managed to take out 5 S-rank missing nin in the space of a few months, he'll be an incredibly valuable addition to Konoha's forces, but that's left unspoken." Kakashi straightens and nods. "Yes, Hokage-sama." Sarutobi smiles at him and hands over a slim scroll. "Last no location," he explains. "If he appears unfriendly, do not risk yourself, and simply return. However, do your best to be persuasive. And polite, Kakashi, please." Kakashi beams at the old man, relief and gratitude filling him all the way down to his toes. Hokage-sama," he says brightly. "When am I not?" Perhaps wisely, the Hokage doesn't answer, but waves him out of the office with a long-suffering shake of his head. Kakashi whistles as he leaves, sauntering through the heavy doors and out. However, once they're closed behind him, the cheer drops from his expression, and he unrolls the scroll. There's little to go on as far as appearance is concerned, but Suna border guards made note of the man heading into the Land of Fire, close to a small town Kakashi is passingly familiar with. There aren't many inns between Suna and the border, and counting the number of bounties the man's claimed, he's likely rolling in Rios and sick of sleeping in the desert. An inn is a safe bet, at least for the next few days. It's what Kakashi would do, at least, coming off the capture of an S-rank criminal. He turns on his heel, hops out the nearest window, and heads for home. With just a little packing, he can be on his way, and the sooner he leaves the sooner he'll reach the border town. The sooner he'll be able to see if this man from Uzushio really is an Uzumaki. Alone and moving fast, Kakashi reaches to small town in just under 2 days. It's a waypoint more than a village, a place to restock supplies before entering the Land of Wind, but there's a decent inn towards the center, manned by a retired Konoha shinobi and his family. Kakashi knows the man in passing from the Third Shinobi War, and nods as he meanders up to the desk. "Koppin in Kakashi," the man says with a crooked smile that pulls at the deep scars which have all but destroyed the left side of his face. "Fancy meeting you here." Kakashi gives him a little wave, smiling in return. "Hisoka-san. It's been a while." He glances around the room, then back at the former nin and says, "I'm looking for a man with red hair, shinobi, Hitayate from." But Hisoka laughs and cuts him off before he can get any further. "No need, Hatake, that hair's enough of a marker to find him anywhere. Second floor, room 16. Hasn't left yet that I've seen." Relieved at the lack of questioning, Kakashi nods his thanks and heads for the stairs, trying to control his heartbeat. He was expecting this to be harder. Truthfully, if the Uzushio nin really did take out 5 members of an organization that recruits S-rank missing nin, surely he'd be more wary, move on before he could be found. Granted, his deeds are impressive, even heard third-hand, but to stay in one place screams of arrogance. Or, possibly, that he's so powerful he can back up that move, but Kakashi doesn't quite know what to think of that. Room 16 is at the end of the hall, a corner room that, at least, shows proper shinobi paranoia, to want to watch as many angles as possible at one time. Kakashi pauses outside the door, for once wishing that he had a Byakugan that allowed him to see through solid objects. There's a lot of chakra in the room, and he can definitely sense someone in there, but in this case at least he'd like a bit of advance warning about what to expect. Still, his Konoha shinobi, one of the greatest in his village, and dithering like a teenager in front of his crush store definitely isn't going to help anything. Steeling his nerves, Kakashi raises a hand and knocks. It's futile to wish he could have done some reconnaissance before meeting the man, but his trying to be polite as per his orders, and spying on a possible ally isn't. His going into this blind. One moment, a quiet voice calls, and there's a rustle of paper for a moment before it goes silent. No footsteps, because no self-respecting shinobi would give themselves away like that, but there's a longer pause than absolutely necessary to get to the door, judging by the relative size of the room. Kakashi suspects that traps are either being disarmed or readied, and he approves either way. The man has some sense, at least. Another pause, and then the door creaks open and one eye looks out, the figure it belongs to backlit by the window and rendered all but invisible. Several seconds of silence stretch out between them, and then the man asks courteously, "May I help you?" Figuring this is as good a cue as any, Kakashi tosses off a lazy salute. "Yo," he says cheerfully. "I'm from Konoha." There's a soft snort, and the door swings open a bit more, an unspoken invitation. "Yes," the man says dryly. "The Hitayate is rather blatant, after all. And I assume you know that your reputation precedes you just about everywhere, Hatake-san." Well, at least he's fairly polite. Kakashi wanders into the room, taking in the lack of clutter that says the nin is ready to evacuate at a moment's notice. There are papers on the bed, about the only mess in the room, and all it takes is a quick glance to recognize them as a variety of seals. Satisfied there are no obvious traps, Kakashi finally turns to look at his host, and has to clamp down on his emotions. That hair is several shades darker than Kushina's was, but it's still unmistakably Uzumaki red, and worn long. The man is young, a little on the short side, leanly slim but still muscular, and there's a thinness to his face that speaks of hunger more than any kind of vanity or genetics. But his eyes are brilliantly blue, like the ocean under the summer sun, and large, full of quiet curiosity as he looks Kakashi over. The Uzushio Hitayate is worn like a headband, holding his hair out of his face, and his clothes are sensible and well-worn, a mesh shirt with three-quarter sleeves, a sleeveless black top, and basic shinobi pants. Tattoo seals cover his arms, another Uzushio standby, and his scarred as though he's seen warfare. If they had met on the street, or on a mission, Kakashi would instantly mark this man as dangerous, despite his stature. The way he carries himself alone speaks of complete assurance in his own power, an easy sort of well-accustomed grace. "You have me at a disadvantage, Shinobi-san," he says, putting on another smile as he fishes. The Uzushio nin snorts, even as he slips over to the bed and gathers up his seals. "I'm flattered you think I'm capable of such a thing," he says dryly. Then he turns, papers in hand, and offers Kakashi a faint smile. There's an edge to it, weary and worn. "However, I'm Uzumaki Kurama. It's an honor to meet the great Koppinin in person." Uzumaki. Kakashi's mind latches onto the clan name and doesn't let go. "Any relation to Uzumaki?" he begins. Kurama cuts him off before he can finish. "One would assume," he says, smiling a little again. "This time, though, it's sad." "Kushina, you were going to say." He doesn't wait for Kakashi's acknowledgement, but nods. "She was a cousin, more or less. I don't remember our exact relationship. The clan was widespread when it existed." That's a bit of a disappointment, though possibly to be expected. Kakashi nods agreeably, and says, "The Hokage sent me to offer you a place in Konoha, if you want it." Because he's looking for it, he catches the sharp but brief widening of the man's eyes, true surprise flickering across his features before it's swiftly buried again. Kakashi wonders at it, because surely he's gotten other such offers before, capturing missing nin as he has been. But then Kurama hesitates, wavers, and dips his head. "I think I would like that," he says carefully, oddly deliberate. as though it's a fulcrum, and he just chose the way the world will turn. Then he flashes another quicksilver smile, there and gone in a moment, and says jokingly, as long as the Hokage doesn't mind a bit of a mercenary joining. I haven't actually belonged to a village since mine fell. Kakashi hears the bite of sorrow in his voice, however hidden, and mentally revises his estimation of Kurama's age. That sounded like the grief of someone who witnessed the destruction firsthand. He'd hardly be the first shinobi to conceal his age. Tsunade is perhaps the best example, but only one of many. And the Uzumaki were renowned for their vitality. It's not inconceivable that Kurama is actually closer to Minato's age than Kakashi's, regardless of appearance. All shinobi are mercenaries in one way or another, he offers, keeping his voice light. And I think catching missing nin makes for a good declaration of intent. Especially those missing nin. Kurama's eyes darken and narrow ever so slightly, and for a moment Kakashi is reminded of Genma's assumption of a grudge being involved. But before he can ask, the redhead nods once, tight and sharp, before his smile returns. He turns, looking around the room, and then sighs and scoops up his pack and a sheathed katana. The seal papers are stuffed in a pocket before he turns to the Koppinin again. I assume we should leave now. Kakashi calculates time and distance before nodding. They can make it a ways before nightfall if they leave now, and the sooner they're in Konoha the better he'll feel. This entire mission has been easy, and if Kakashi knows anything, it's that his luck never holds out for long. Kurama moves like a shadow, swift and utterly silent, even to Kakashi's trained ears. He keeps in step with Kakashi easily enough, no matter how fast Kakashi sets their pace, and doesn't fumble even when Kakashi leads them on sudden detours or shortcuts. The Koppinin watches him out of the corner of one eye, curious and a little wary, but the Uzushio nin makes no threatening moves at all. His katana, a lovely thing with a silver hilt and deep blue wrappings, stays in its sheath, and Kakashi never sees him channel an ounce more chakra than is needed for running the branches. He does that as well as a Konoha shinobi, which is curious, and Kakashi files it away for later consideration. He's doing a lot of that, it seems, but Uzumaki Kurama is interesting, when life has been fairly boring for years now. It's not just his appearance, red hair aside, he doesn't resemble Kushina much at all. But his strong and by his own accounting has been alone for years, since Uzushio fell. Kakashi finds it hard to imagine such a thing, such a tragedy. He doesn't want to, either. By unspoken agreement they stop when it gets too dark to pick out the individual trees, and set up a rough camp. Kakashi doesn't bother lighting a fire, simply watches as Kurama walks the perimeter they've set up, drawing symbols at each of the cardinal points and then connecting them in a circle. It comes to life with 3 speed-blurred hand signs, flaring up in a crackle of purple chakra and then settling back again, humming gently. Kakashi considers the color, which is never encountered before, and then files that away as well. It's an impressive seal for such quick work, though, and when Kakashi discreetly tests it with a handful of pebbles, they end up as dots of smoldering slag scorching the ground. Kakashi stares at them for a long moment, suddenly overwhelmingly thankful that he chose to use rocks rather than going with his first impulse and poking the barrier. Forgot to warn you, Hatake-san, Kurama says, inordinately cheerful all of a sudden. It might be best not to touch. Kakashi shoots him the dark look that deserves and settles back. They haven't spoken much today, running in silence for the most part, and Kakashi is surprised that the man's been able to hold his tongue this long. Even some of the more sensible shinobi, such as Genma and Reidu, get twitchy after too much time without speaking. Kurama looks just fine, though, munching on a ration bar as he frowns down at yet another seal. Kakashi sneaks a peek, but can't make heads or tails of the thing. He's hardly a seal master, though Minato or Jiraiya would doubtless have loved to pick the young man's brain. He makes it another 10 minutes, choking down his own ration bar, before the hush gets to him and he gives in with a sigh. You're good with seals, then? Kurama pulls the bar from his mouth, swallows with a faint grimace, and nods. It was taught to pretty much everyone in Uzushio. Different people had talent in different areas, of course, but sealing was common. He glances down at his current project. I'm good at creating, coming up with ideas. Adapting. Other people could counter seals, or dismantle them, or copy them flawlessly. It's just another kind of art. Yuzushio simply taught it more thoroughly than anyone does today. And Yuzushio was destroyed because of that, Kakashi thinks, hiding a grimace of his own. In the Second Shinobi War, Iwa feared rightly, perhaps that Yuzushio would come to Konoha's aid, devastating their ranks with Fuinjutsu, so they had destroyed it. Yuzushio was never a large village, and the land of whirlpools was small as well, so both had fallen quickly, before Konoha could reach them to lend support. Kushina's grief whenever someone mentioned her country had been terrible, and she hadn't had to watch it be destroyed. It must have been far worse for Kurama, if he truly was present. Seeming to feel Kakashi's eyes on him, Kurama looks up and offers a faint, sardonic smile. "Stop it. That happened a long time ago. Hatake-san. I've recovered as much as I ever will. Don't pity me. Why not go to Konoha?" Kakashi asks. "They were allies. You would have been welcomed. And trade one village for another." Kurama shakes his head. "My home fell. At that point, I wasn't about to go looking for a new one. It would have felt like a betrayal." He turns to look up at the stars, eyes catching on the moon for a long moment as it peers through the branches, and then glances back at his companion. "Since I want to finish this, I'll take first watch," he offers. Clearly the subject is closed now. Kakashi tells himself to be content with what he's discovered so far, and nods his agreement. He settles into his bedroll and closes his eyes, but the faint scratch of pen over paper keeps catching his attention. Sleep is a long time in coming. Once, Naruto would have hesitated to call himself Kurama, might never have even dreamed that he would. But now, knowing what the fox gave up for him to live, understanding the Kyuubi just a little bit more from their too brief friendship and Kurama's sacrifice, Naruto wears the name with pride. It's more or less his by right now, so he doesn't truly even think of it as lying. He's never been good at lying, even his undercover missions tended to involve more half-truths than anything, so he and Sasuke worked out a story with enough semi-truths to let him pass. Yuzushio is gone, all of its records destroyed and its remaining shinobi scattered to the winds. One more Uzumaki is nothing in the scheme of things, and with this unexpected invitation into Konoha, if he plays his cards right, the first stage of the task is done. Akatsuki has been removed from power, Tobi's cat's paws made powerless. Zetsu is dead, as are the others beside Konan and Nagato, now in hiding, and there are few, if any, other missing nin at their level. After being told of the future, Nagato was even willing to give up the Rinnegan eyes Madara had implanted, and which are now finally destroyed. It's taken almost a whole year and a great many failed plans, but it's done. It had been a vague thought, somewhere in the middle of all that, to return to Konoha at some point, maybe petition to be allowed to see his young relative, but the Hokage's invitation simplifies everything. He'll be a Konoha shinobi again, though he'd never thought it could happen after his Konoha was raised by Madara. It will even be a whole Konoha, and something in his chest both aches and eases at the thought. Sasuke will be there, a child, perhaps, but there. So will his counterpart in this timeline, and Sakura, and the rest of the Konoha 12. They'll be alive. Incredible. Astounding. Unbelievable, even. But Kurama does believe it, can't do anything else, because his former teacher is waiting for him in front of the gates, hands in his pockets and slouching indolently. One dark gray eye is fixed on him, careful but more at ease than the days previously, and Kurama summons up a smile for the man. "Big," is what he says, leaping from the trees and walking up to join him. "The biggest hidden village," Kakashi returns, pride clear in his voice. "The Land of Fire might not be the largest, but Konoha has won every war for a reason." He turns and heads through the great gates, sparing a wave for the Chunin manning it, Kotetsu and Izumo, as ever, and Kurama gives them both a genuine smile, relieved beyond measure to see them both whole. Izumo had died at that gate, the last time Madara invaded. They'd managed to evacuate, to get out in time, but Kotetsu had never been the same afterwards. When he too died, making a final stand to give several families time to escape a compromised refugee camp, Kurama had been almost relieved. One shouldn't have had to live without the other. Kotetsu looks at him curiously for a moment, even as Izumo calls unhappily, "Kakashi-san, you." "Ma, I'm taking him directly to the Hokage," Kakashi promises. "Uzumaki-san is here on his invitation." "Just Kurama. Kurama puts in, dipping his head to the two Chunan. I'm younger than you, Hatake-san. Just Kakashi, then Kakashi retorts. In half a moment he's on the nearest roof, looking down at Kurama expectantly. This way's faster, Kurama-kun. Follow like a good boy. Kurama rolls his eyes, returns Izumo's long-suffering smile, and follows his former teacher up onto the rooftops. The Koppanin barely waits for him to find his footing before he heads for the Hokage Tower. It's deliberate for Kurama to slow his pace slightly, looking around the village he's thought of as gone for years now. It's peaceful. It's beautiful. It exists, and that alone is more than enough for Kurama. Too soon, far too soon there at the academy, and Kurama bemusedly watches Kakashi bounce straight up to the Hokage's window without a thought. Tsunade would have drop-kicked him right back out for using it with a visitor in tow, but apparently the Sandaime is far more lenient with the Koppanin. Still, Kurama is slightly more hesitant as he mimics him, and balances cautiously on the sill to make sure of his welcome. It is fortunate that so long has passed since he landed in this time, because even a few months ago he would have likely burst into tears at the sight of that wrinkled face under the fancy hat, those sharp dark eyes taking him in as he hovers there. But he's had a little less than a year to accustom himself to seeing familiar and long-dead faces, places destroyed years past and now untouched. As it is, Kurama slips down to the floor and bows deeply to this man he failed to save once before, genin or not. The Sandaime was like a grandfather to him, was the only one who cared for years, and even if Kurama manages to change nothing else in this timeline, he will plant Orochimaru's traitorous head on a stake in the middle of the village for all the world to see. Hokage-sama, he says politely. I am Uzumaki Kurama. Thank you very much for your generous invitation. It is an honor, and I will do my best to make it worthwhile for you. A firm hand tugs him upright, and Kurama follows it, blinking at Sarutobi in surprise. The old man smiles at him, lined face creasing, and Kurama feels something in his chest all but give way. His eyes burn, to his horror, and he prays that he isn't about to start crying in front of this man, his very first hero. But Sarutobi simply smiles, kind and gentle, and puts a hand on his shoulder. You must have had a very hard time of it, my boy, he murmurs. I am sorry for your loss. No one has said that to him, ever. There was never really anyone close enough to lose, before and after. After, there were too many to mourn, regardless. Kurama ducks his head, lifting his hands to cover his face. He won't let them see him weep. He won't, he can't even if he's never managed to grieve properly, even if Sasuke's loss is still a seeping, bleeding wound in his heart, he doesn't. A strong arm curves around his back, and the Sandaime, his first precious person, tugs him a step closer, lets him rest his head on his shoulder and weeps silently. Weak. So stupidly, disgustingly weak, Kurama berates himself, but it's not enough to make him stop. Sorry, he murmurs, fighting the tears. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama. No, Sarutobi tells him kindly. Do not be. It is all right to cry when coming home after a long journey. Home is a word that Kurama has not heard in years, since long before Konoha fell for the last time. He laughs a little, pulling back and looking into the Hokage's face with all the gratitude that he feels. It's enough to swamp him, to overwhelm, but it's so sweet at the same time. What he told Kakashi about not finding another village was true at that point. With Konoha broken, he could have gone to Suna, or Kumo, or Kiri. They all would have taken him, but he hadn't been able to bring himself to seek out a new home, to settle when the only village he'd ever loved was a haunted and ransacked ruin. But here and now, Konoha is well, and if Kurama has his way, it will never, ever fall. It can be a home again, his home again. I would like to stay here, he manages after a long moment of aching wonder at the thought. If you are willing to make a mercenary drifter a Konoha shinobi, I would devote my life to the well-being of this village in a heartbeat. For the sake of home, he thinks but does not say. From the smile on Sarutobi's face, he understands regardless. Very well, he says, taking a step back. Normally, you would be tested so I knew what rank to give you, but after capturing 5 S-rank missing nin, I believe that doing so would be redundant. Sarutobi turns away, giving Kurama a moment to compose himself, and digs through one of his desk drawers. After a few muttered curses, he emerges with a Konoha Hitayate and a stack of forms. Here we are. Once the paperwork is done, you'll be instated as a Jounin of Konohagakure, and lodging will be found for you. The red tape and bureaucracy, at least, are still familiar, and Kurama nods, taking both. The Hitayate feels heavy in his hand, weighty in a comforting, nostalgic sort of way. He reaches up to remove the Yuzushio one he's currently wearing, commissioned here in this time because he had never replaced his battered old Konoha one after the village's fall. Yuzushio was a safe place to claim allegiance with, unconnected to most anything of note, being fallen, and he and Sasuke had chosen it for just that reason. But Kurama thinks Sasuke would understand this change in their plan, this deviation in the name of something they had both longed for. So he lets the Yuzushio Hitayate drop to hang limply around his arm, slides the Konoha plate into its place in his thick hair. That feels more like coming home than anything. A good fit, Sarutabi murmurs, pleased and thoughtful. Welcome, Uzumaki Kurama. Konoha is honored. Kurama bows again, not as a stranger this time, but as another Konoha shinobi, showing respect to his Hokage. As am I, Hokage-sama. Thank you. He means for far more than the Hitayate or the place, but he doesn't say it, and if Sarutabi understands, he gives no sign beyond a small smile. Hiruzen watches the boy leave, those blue eyes half-dazed and rather shaken. He is unmistakably an Uzumaki, what with those chakra reserves and that hair, and Hiruzen wonders if it's weakness not to view him with suspicion. But those tears were real, as was that overwhelming relief at being offered a home. His face is tight with stress that has long since become a way of life, and though he is not of Konoha, the will of fire burns in his tired eyes nonetheless. The Hokage sighs and shifts his pipe to the other side of his mouth, staring out the window at the village as it settles for the night. Kurama was polite enough to leave via the door, and from here, Hiruzen can see his deep crimson hair as he slips through the streets. There's an ANBU following him. Of course Hiruzen is no fool, regardless of what Danzo thinks, but Hiruzen does not believe he will make any trouble. He has seen many lost souls in his years as Hokage, and this boy is one of them. There is grief in him, a great and terrible grief, the kind that can only come with losing everything. It supports his story, shows the truth of his words when others might call him a spy or a fake. Hiruzen blows out a long breath of smoke, and asks softly, "Your impression, Kakashi?" The Koppanin is perched in a chair off to the side, waiting patiently. When the Hokage addresses him, he straightens up and puts away his book. "He's not lying," he offers. "And he never made a move against me, even when he didn't know what I wanted with him. I'd say watch him for a month or two, but I don't think there will be a problem." With a small smirk, Hiruzen turns and beams approvingly at his successor's student. "Ah, thank you for volunteering, Kakashi. I was hoping you would. Very well, then, off you go. Make sure he gets home safely, him?" Konoha can be quite the confusing place after dark. Kakashi splutters. Hiruzen sweeps out of his office with a smirk, glad he's still able to pull one over on his shinobi, regardless of his own age or theirs. Victory is sweet indeed. He dreams of pale hands reaching out, of eyes growing dark, of blood spilled across forest floors and splattered garishly over stately tree trunks. "Go," a voice says, and he does, falls away spinning and reeling out of one time and into another. "You can change it all," the voice tells him, hot sharp with hope and something that they will never let themselves call desperation, but which reeks of it nevertheless. Black-red eyes and soft black hair and a kiss that steals his breath, steals his heart, takes away all will to leave and go back to the fight that they cannot, must not, will not lose, even though there is no way to ever really win. "Koi," it says, but that's not right. "Dobi, and that's better, that's what they have had, that's what they had," all sharp words and gentle touches, a bond of brothers and you're the last, we're the last, and tangled souls, and so much more. "Go," Sasuke says again. And when has he ever done anything but obey that particular tone, low with certainty and sorrow? Kurama opens his eyes to stare at the ceiling, breathless with that whispered "go," and breathes out, careful and steady. The sun is rising, the moon setting, and Fox Kurama's sacrifice has left him entirely in tune with such shifts. It's still odd, too, for there to be a moon, though he is grateful. It is a difference to help keep him straight, even when just waking, and he can never forget with it in the sky. It is morning, and outside the window of his new apartment the village is stirring, coming to life with a sleepy murmur and a hum of energy. There's no way Kurama will be able to keep himself asleep, not in Konoha, so he slides out of bed and dresses quickly. A quick inventory of his weapons pouch reveals that he's running short on both senbon and the paralytic poison he used to take out Kizum. Luckily the ingredients are native to Konoha. It's one of the concoctions that Genma taught him, back when the man was still alive. Kurama is a fair hand at poisons now, though it always leaves an unpleasant taste in his mouth to use them. But shinobi are killers, and while Kurama will be forever hopeful, forever certain that they can also be more, it is their calling first and foremost, and has long since adjusted to the difference between a hope held heart-deep and a naive conviction. He slips out of the apartment on silent feet, pausing at the threshold to slap a paper seal on the door and activate his wards. They go up with a crackle of chakra, not yet fine-tuned but good enough to last until he takes the time to tweak them. Then he's down the hall and out the window, not bothering with the stairs as he hops out and lands lightly in the dusty street. A passing foreign merchant startles, but the Konoha civilians are entirely used to such things, and simply smile their greetings. Kurama smiles back, reveling in the sheer life here as he picks a path and starts to wander. 4 streets later, his silent steps gain an echo, and a familiar figure looking rather more rumpled than the last time Kurama saw him drops down to walk beside him. Kakashi gives him a sour look, even as he pulls his book out. "Not a night owl, then," he says with weary resignation. "DMN." Apparently this is the man the Hokage assigned to be his babysitter. Kurama remembers hours spent languishing in boredom as a genin, waiting for their instructor to arrive, and grins without an ounce of pity. "Nope," he says cheerfully, sidestepping a cart. "Up with the sun, always." Of course, he's generally up with the moon, too, since he needs far less sleep than a regular human, but he won't tell Kakashi that just yet. Let the man dream, and all that. The streets are a familiar maze, and Kurama makes a show of wandering blindly. It's not all for Kakashi's sake, of course, or for the ANBU in the shadows. He's been away from Konoha for years, and even before that he was rarely in the village, always coordinating attacks or defenses, spearheading hit-and-run infiltrations deep in enemy territory. That Konoha had been strange, as well, more refugee camp than bustling village, and to see it like this, lively and yet peaceful, is a comfort and a balm on long unhealed wounds. "Here," Kakashi says suddenly, and Kurama barely has time to catch the flak jacket that's tossed at him before it hits him in the head. He arches a brow at the koppinin, even as he pulls it on and zips it up. A quick roll of his shoulders tests the range of movement it gives him, which seems to be unencumbered. "Thanks." He smiles at the other man, even as his fingers linger over the Yuzushio spiral stitched into the fabric. He's never worn one of these, actually never made it past genin, back home, because by the time he'd done enough to earn a field promotion everyone already knew him, knew he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and that alone was enough to put him in the bingo book. "Jounin," he thinks, testing out the rank, and smiles. "Jounin Uzumaki Kurama. That's acceptable." "Breakfast," he offers on a sudden whim. "My treat. I dragged you out at dawn, so the least I can do is provide food. Pick a place, Kakashi-san." The koppinin looks at him sidelong, careful and considering, and then flips his orange book open and buries his nose in it. "Ma," he says disinterestedly. "Free food is free food. Why don't you pick?" Kurama rolls his eyes, feeling a sudden surge of nostalgic fondness for this weird and eccentric shinobi. Konoha was never truly Konoha to him after the man's death, and right now, in this timeline, Kurama makes another vow to himself. Orochimaru's head on a pike and take Kakashi alive, no matter what it takes to do it. Otherwise, he might as well not save the future, because his Konoha will still be dead. Along with the Sandame, Kakashi is family, Kurama's first besides Iruka. Family, precious people, and his. Regardless of whether he was able to keep them in the other timeline, here he still has the chance, and he won't waste it. As they meander, Kurama casts a look up at the Hokage Mountain, at the 4 faces carved into the stone. It's a bittersweet sight, and not just for the lack of battle scarring and cracks that he remembers in it. His father is up there, and while he loves the man, he knows the story of that night. Minato chose to seal the Kyuubi into him, rather than resealing the fox into his mother and letting it follow her into death. Kurama doesn't hate him for it, but he can't help wondering sometimes just how things would have played out had Minato made the other choice available to him. It's at the point now where he can't even begin to imagine it, and perhaps that's for the better. With a soft sigh, Kurama tucks his hands into his pockets, shaking his head to clear away such unnecessary thoughts. The sun is coming up, the village is waking, and it's not the time for such things. In the future, perhaps this is a waiting game now, after all, since Obito will doubtless be coming after him for the destruction of the Akatsuki, but not at the moment. Kurama has just regained his life. He'll take a handful of days to truly live it before he starts breaking it apart again. Kakashi is a faithful shadow, omnipresent pawn or no. He follows Kurama to breakfast, and then through the streets as the Uzumaki wanders, always there, always watching, but unobtrusive enough in doing so that Kurama can pretend he's a friend rather than a guard. Kurama is thankful, because he needs a friend more than he's willing to admit. Almost a year in this time, almost a year since Sasuke's death at his own hand, or at Madara's, and Kurama is still grieving. He wonders, sometimes, if he'll always be grieving, no matter how much time passes, but then he inevitably shies away from that thought, because it's too painful. Kurama has always tried to keep his hopes up, to reserve a smile for even the worst of times, but the grief of loss and loneliness is something he knows far too intimately for comfort. However tempted he is, Kurama doesn't immediately head for Ichiraku Ramen to get his second breakfast that will have to wait for a slightly more socially acceptable hour, given that he's trying to keep a low profile and not arouse suspicion. Instead, he steps past it, ignoring the almost desperate urge to duck inside and see old man Tucci working behind the counter, smiling sweetly at their customers. Too many lost, too many returned, and Kurama's heart doesn't entirely know what to do with this rush of feeling. Happiness and heartache are warring sides of his soul, with neither one gaining the upper hand. People in the streets are smiling, laughing, going about their day with no comprehension of what is looming, what was looming before Kurama took it upon himself to wipe it out. There is still Obito to worry about, but Naruto knows him, knows his heart, and that he can be overcome. His will of fire is still present, still strong, if misguided. Even if there is no redemption to be found outside of death, Kurama still has hope for him. Up ahead, at the intersection of two streets, a scuffle breaks out. Kurama lifts his head curiously, and even Kakashi flicks his eyes up, just in time to see a streak of brilliant orange come shooting towards them. The Koppanin sidesteps almost idly, clearly used to such happenings, but Kurama stands his ground. Half a heartbeat before he's mowed down, he lashes out, snags the collar of that eye-searing jumpsuit, and lifts his younger counterpart right off his feet. Naruto's feet flail comically in the air for a heartbeat before he realizes what's happened and jers his head up with an outraged, "Hey!" Kurama winces slightly at the volume so close to his sensitive ears, but raises a brow at the boy with a faint smile. "Careful," he admonishes. "You might hurt someone like that." Naruto crosses his arms over his chest and scowls, clearly attempting to look menacing and very much failing. "Well, if you can't get out of my way in time, then you're not a very good shinobi," he scoffs. "Ah, but I'm not the only one on the street," Kurama reminds him, finally lowering his arm and setting the boy on the ground. "There are civilians as well, and even if you're a child, you've already started training as a shinobi yourself. That gives you an unfair advantage." That mulish expression doesn't fade. Kurama, knowing very well how stubborn he himself can be, simply rolls his eyes and pats the boy on the head, then steps away. "Just a thought," he says cheerfully, rejoining Kakashi and picking another street at random. "See you around, kid." That hair is a taunt, Kakashi thinks, staring across the training grounds to where Kurama is gliding through a series of entirely unfamiliar katas. There's a storm wind picking up, carrying the reins towards them, and it tugs and teases at Kurama's deep crimson locks. They flutter around his face, a tattered banner of red. As long as that hair is, it's practically an engraved invitation for an enemy shinobi to grab it, use it as a handhold to bring the Uzumaki to his knees. But Kurama moves like a predator, and his katas are quicksilver and as smooth as flowing water. It's a style Kakashi doesn't know, But even watching he can tell it's tricky, constantly changing direction and utilizing a good many aerial leaps and twists. With that katana of his augmenting it, he's likely nigh on unstoppable. Kakashi is more than willing to put money on the fact that no one ever gets a single step closer to Uzumaki Kurama than he consciously allows. 5 days he's been in Konoha, and 5 days he's spent wandering the streets at all hours. Kakashi's stuck with him as much as possible, but at some point even he has had to admit defeat and head to bed, while Kurama continues on without him. From the ANBU guard, Kakashi's learned that the redhead spends maybe 3 hours a night in his apartment, and the rest in the village or the woods around it. It's like he doesn't need sleep at all, like he isn't accustomed to it, and Kakashi has to wonder what kind of life he's been leading to be so constantly on edge. And then, of course, there's the grief in his eyes, the lines of weariness in his face as he slips down crowded streets and smiles at passers-by, always a little distant, a little detached, but always fond, an outsider looking in on an unfamiliar but touching scene. The cessation of movement in the field draws his attention back, and the first thing he sees is that banner of red whipping and dancing in the rising wind. Kurama stands with both feet planted and his hands loose at his side, head tipped back and face turned up as the first few drops of rain begin to fall. The green-gray dimness of a fire country rainstorm slides, liquid and languid, over the planes and angles of his too-thin face, highlighting the gold of his skin and the impossibly vivid red darkness of his hair. Like a painting, Kakashi thinks, or some quietly dramatic scene out of a movie. He closes his Icha book and slips it away, suddenly feeling like he's intruding on something, imposing his presence when it isn't welcome. Isn't right. With an audible rumble, a clatter of drops on tiled roofs and in dusty streets, the storm breaks. It feels like a physical shattering, the sky falling to pieces as water sheets down over them, rattling the leaves of the trees and drenching both shinobi within seconds. Out in the middle of the field, Kurama blinks like it's a surprise, like the clouds haven't been threatening since yesterday, and then he does something Kakashi doesn't expect. He smiles. He lifts his face to the sky again, tips his head back until the pounding rain is running down his throat, soaking his hair and turning it nearly black, and then he laughs. The smile becomes a grin, and laughter grows brighter, bolder, and Kakashi just stares at the madman out in the rain, so content even though Kakashi can't quite see anything to be so happy about. But that, too, is something Kakashi's noticed about Konoha's newest jounin. He can be sad, despondent at times, but there's something ultimately happy in him, something that lets him look around the village and greet people with a smile, enjoy small things like fresh dango or sunrises or a waxing moon. Kurama is cheerful and prone to laughter, and no matter the grief in him, that part is still very much at the forefront. 5 days in Konoha, and Kakashi suspects that this newest defender will be one of the village's most steadfast. With a faint smile of his own, Kakashi hops down from the tree branch and makes his way through the sheeting rain, ignoring the immediate drenching. He tucks his hands in his pockets and meanders up to stand beside Kurama, who's still grinning. "Like the rain?" he asks, and his voice is about the only part of him that's dry. Shaking his sodden hair out of his face, Kurama turns his smile on Kakashi. His blue eyes are vivid in the dim half-light, full of something that's unnervingly close to wonder. "Yes," he says unreservedly. "It's seeing rain over a village again, it's beautiful." Kakashi blinks, looking down at his companion, and then turns back towards the village, trying to see what he does. A moment of disassociation, of straining his eyes, and Kakashi is just about to give up when something suddenly clicks into place. His gaze shifts, refocuses, and suddenly he can see the way the water bounces and the light reflects, creating halos around everything. He can see the way the leaves shine, impossibly green, and feel the freshness in the air, smell the dusty earth as it soaks up the moisture and turns to a rich, dark brown. "Ah," he says in surprise, and Kurama laughs at him. "Yes," he agrees, and it's softer this time, sweeter. "Beautiful." Another moment of nearly reverent silence passes, and then Kurama shakes his hair out of his eyes and steps away. He scoops up his katana and slides it into its strap, then pulls a length of leather out of his pocket and ties his hair back. "Would you be willing to show me to the library?" he asks without glancing back at Kakashi, eyes still fixed on the roofs of the peaceful village. "I think it's about time I started doing something productive." 5 days, Kakashi wants to protest, though he doesn't quite know why. 5 days of rest after how many months hunting missing nin? But Kakashi's hardly in the position to lecture anyone about overworking themselves, so he dips his head in acknowledgement and nudges Kurama to the right. Ma, he says lazily. Hokage-sama will probably want to start you off with milk runs. Start us off, Kakashi corrects mentally, grimacing faintly underneath his mask. It's very, very unlikely that the Hokage will assign anyone else as babysitter, since there's still a week until team selections at the academy. Kakashi suspects he'll get stuck with the last Ucha, but beyond that, there's just a sort of blanket dread about the whole thing. Kurama hums non-committally as they start back towards the village. Kakashi lets the redhead lead, because he's fairly certain that with Kurama's very good sense of direction and the fact that he knows they've passed the library at least 4 times on their walks, the new Jounin can find it for himself. There's certainly no hesitation in his steps, so Kakashi suspects that the request was simply a well-hidden invitation to join him. Odd, really, that Kakashi doesn't feel like turning it down. Then again, Uzumaki Kurama is a mystery, just as much as he is a connection to Kushina and, through her, to Minato. Kakashi's always been one to cling to his memories, to the remnants of the past no matter how distant or unhealthy. And has always enjoyed a good mystery. It's been a very long time since Kurama was last able to enjoy a rainstorm without worrying about Sasuke's illness getting worse in the damp, or finding shelter, or keeping vital supplies dry. He smiles as the drops fall, glorying in the simplicity of peace and the ease of a lazy day as he and Kakashi make their way through the village. People smile and wave, accustomed to his face after so many hours spent wandering, and Kurama waves back, almost gleeful that he can. Sasuke's loss is still an ache, a needle-thin blade lodged deep in his heart, and Kurama is familiar enough with grief to know that it will always be there. He might not remember, from time to time, but he will never forget. Nevertheless, there is tranquility to be had in Konoha, balm for wounds that have been gaping for too long already. That first day, Kurama had thought he would be bombarded with old memories, the reminders of his failures in another life, but instead, he's found peace. They all fought, back in Kurama's timeline. Everyone who could, right down to the civilians who had the courage to pick up swords and defend their homes even if they'd never wielded anything more dangerous than a hoe before. For the first few years, every death had been a personal failure, something Kurama should have been able to prevent but hadn't. In time, though, while each death still tore at him, ripped at his soul and his mind in equal measure, he'd begun to understand that they had all made their choices. They were all doing what had to be done, taking the only remaining option, and only a fool or a madman would accept all the fault. Kurama's never been particularly smart when it comes to grief or loss, but he can respect sacrifice. He can accept a friend's dying gesture and grow stronger from their memories. Kurama-san, an aged voice calls, and Kurama blinks, jolted out of his thoughts. He turns and bows to the Hokage, who is just emerging from a tea house with a familiar figure in tow. Seeing Iruka-sensei is like confronting all over again the fact that he's in the past, that he still has time and opportunity to save those he loves so dearly. It takes so very much effort not to beam at the man and pull him into a tight hug. Hokage-sama, he answers politely. How are you today? The old man smiles at him, warm and fond, and Kurama wonders, just briefly and with some awe, what he's done to earn such an expression. A bit damp, but otherwise very well, he says cheerfully. I apologize for interrupting your plans, but might I speak with you in my office? Before Kurama can answer, Iruka has taken a step forward, eyes narrowed, and the redhead almost recoils before he realizes that the expression a dangerous one, more than capable of cowing Koges and reining in entire hordes of rowdy children armed with sharp, pointy objects isn't directed at him. Kakashi beams his bullshit smile and says innocently, Ma, Iruka-sensei, what's the matter? If anything, Iruka's eyes narrow further. You, he growls, and Kurama takes a discreet step back as the Chunan stalks forward. It's telling that the Sandaime does the same. Your Jounin instructor paperwork is 3 weeks overdue, Hatache. There's a long moment of silence where Kakashi simply blinks, and then he reaches up to rub faux sheepishly at the back of his head. Oh, he asks guilelessly. Really? Iruka makes a sound like a cat dumped into a bubble bath and pounces. Kakashi attempts to evade, springing for the rooftops, but the academy instructor is hot on his heels and lunges again, knocking him off the roof as he touches down and following him over the far side of the building. The sound of wood breaking and something metal impacting something decidedly not rips through the air, and then there's silence again. The Sandaime sighs and covers his eyes with a gnarled hand, muttering under his breath. Kurama gives in to the mirth building in his chest and laughs, shoulders shaking as he tries to contain it, one hand pressed over his mouth but doing little to conceal the sound as it rings through the street. After a moment, the Hokage joins in, shaking his head. I have been informed, he says wryly, that there is no other place quite like Konoha, just as there are no other shinobi quite like our shinobi. For once, I think that the Kazekage was telling me the truth. Kurama wipes his eyes, finally managing to regain his breath, and snorts. Wasn't that a Chunin? He asks, because the sight of Kakashi getting his feet swept out from under him and then tossed off a roof is one he's going to hang on to forever, and that's as good a point of connection with Iruka as any. The Hokage huffs out another laugh and steps away, heading for the academy. Yes, well, he says wryly. Yumino Iruka has always been a very special Chunin, and Hatake Kakashi is hardly an average Jounin. Falling into pace with him, Kurama snorts again. So I've noticed, he agrees, tilting his face up to meet the rain again. After Madara burned whole swathes of Fire Country some sort of twisted, belated revenge against Hashirama, no doubt the sky always seemed to be choked with ash, and the rain was never clean. This storm is, though, clear and clean and beautiful, smelling like fresh-turned earth and green leaves and growth. He inhales it with relish, unable to fight his smile, and then looks at the old man walking next to him without concern. Thank you again, Hokage-sama, he says, because it really can't be repeated enough. He came to this time without any plans to return to Konoha permanently at best. He had thought to slip through whenever his plans allowed, keeping an eye on his old team and his younger self. But the Hokage's invitation changed all of that, and Kurama would like to think that it's for the better. Sarutobi flashes him a small, sincere smile. You are very welcome, my boy, he says, sweeping into the administration division and up the stairs towards his office. Kurama follows, nodding a polite greeting to the ANBU hidden in the shadows of the door as they enter the office. Come, the Hokage calls cheerfully. I've tea, Kurama-kun, if you would like, or a very nice sake that my student sent me from Rice Country. Kurama thinks of Tsunade and can't contain his grin. The sake, please, he says, even though with his constitution he's never actually managed to get so much as tipsy, regardless of how hard Tsunade tried. And she tried very, very hard indeed. Pleasantly buzzed was about as far as he got before she finally admitted defeat. A good choice, Sarutobi approves, pouring them each a small cup and gesturing Kurama to the chair across his desk. Kurama takes it, accepting the sake. It is good, sweet with a mellow burn, and he closes his eyes in pleasure. Whether the alcohol affects him or not, Tsunade at least taught him to appreciate the taste. There's a long stretch of comfortable silence, and then Kurama lifts his head to meet the Hokage's eyes. Was there something you needed besides a drinking partner, Hokage-sama? He asks with humor. I'm always willing to indulge in some good sake, of course, but... The Hokage chuckles softly. No, he admits, a drinking partner wasn't my goal, though the company is nice. He pauses, and then says carefully, the missing nin you captured were all agents of the Akatsuki organization. Ah. So that's what this is about. Kurama has been expecting this since his return, and has prepared for it. He dips his head in a faint nod, and murmurs, yes. My approach was systematic. I removed as many of their agents as I could. Sarutobi's fingers close just a little more tightly around his cup. There have been rumors, he says carefully, that Konoha's most infamous missing nin was a part of that very organization. He has a sizable bounty, and I cannot help but notice that it was not claimed. Kurama sets his cup back on the desk, giving the Hokage his full attention, and nods again. Yes, Uchiha Itachi's bounty is very large, he agrees, keeping his tone lazy. However, you're forgetting one thing, I don't hunt innocent men. Sarutobi's breath catches in his throat, more of a tell than a veteran shinobi would ever normally show. He stills, eyes narrowing as they fix on Kurama's face, and there are 1,000 thoughts whirling behind those wise, dark eyes. A long moment of silence, and then Sarutobi closes his eyes and settles back into his chair with a weary sigh. So you know, he says with some resignation. I had wondered, when no one claimed his bounty. Kurama smiles, sad and slight. I had a friend in the Uchiha clan, he offers. He knew Itachi, and could recognize the stress that he was being put under. However, he also told me that Itachi was entirely loyal to Konoha, even more than he was to his clan, and I would take his word over anyone else's. There had to be another explanation, and with the survival of Itachi's little brother, well, the pieces kind of fell together. Bits and pieces of the truth, perhaps, strung together out of order, but it's true enough to ease the tension around the Hokage size, the stiff set of his shoulders. A friend, he echoes with a faint, rueful smile. He must have been a very good friend indeed, for you to put so much faith in his words. The best, Kurama agrees without hesitation. The very best, and more. He reaches up to touch the slender braid that still hangs beside his face, warmth and fondness filling him, because for all that they ended in tragedy, Sasuke is still so very much a part of all his happiness. He always will be, and in this case at least, the good memories cannot hold a candle to the bad. Sarutobi watches him, regret in his eyes as his gaze lingers on the red and black threads wound around the twist of hair. Was it Shisue-kun? He asks suddenly, and then raises a hand to cut Kurama off before he can even open his mouth. No, never mind me, Kurama-kun. It's your secret to keep, and I will not ask for it. Kurama offers him a smile, soft for all it's sad, and says nothing. He won't deny it, because the assumption is a useful one, but he also won't confirm it, because Sasuke is worth more than that. What will you do? He asks instead. I've been keeping tabs on Itachi, just to make sure no one else claims the bounty. He hesitates, wondering how much to reveal, and then adds cautiously, there have been rumors of a threat rising in the land of sound. Those sharp eyes flicker up to meet his, and the Hokage arches a brow. Yet another Konoha bounty you have not claimed, he says reservedly. Kurama grimaces, hands clenching in his lap as he imagines wrapping his fingers around Orochimaru's slimy throat. He agrees, keeping his voice carefully light. But this one, I assure you, is simply because I lacked the opportunity before now. Sarutobi watches him carefully for a long moment before he inclines his head slightly. I will think on it, he murmurs. Sensing that the meeting is coming to a close, Kurama pushes to his feet. Good, he returns. Another hesitation, and then he takes a breath and says, from what I've been able to learn, there were other factors that night, as well. I have no doubts as to Uchiha Itachi's skill, but it is possible there was another present that night as well. A step forward with the plan early, perhaps, but one he and Sasuke agreed upon nevertheless. Madara and Obito managed to hide in the shadows for far too long before, but this time it won't go the way they wanted it to. Already Kurama has managed to shred their power base, to drive them back into hiding. At this point Madara is still dead, not yet revived, and Kurama has faith that Obito can be called back to sanity. He has the will of fire, after all, and it still burns inside of him. Kurama will appeal to that and hope for the best, but is prepared for the worst as well. He'll do anything, whatever he must, to keep this world from falling as his did. The first attempt of the day is a bucket of water rigged precariously over his door. Perched in the hallway window, having just returned from a pre-dawn, and unsupervised, because Kakashi apparently can no longer be bothered to drag himself out of bed and the Enbu are nowhere to be found, training session, Kurama eyes the bucket with amusement. He studies his door for a moment, and then affably slides right back out to enter through the balcony. His stalker isn't quite bold enough to curse, but judging by the waves of frustration coming from the far end of the hall, it's a very near thing. The next attempt comes that afternoon, when Kurama arrives back at his apartment from his shift at the mission's assignment desk. He leaps from the rooftop across the way in an easy bound, going slow enough to spot the suspicious sheen on his balcony railing from a good distance away. Entirely amused, with a large helping of nostalgia on the side, Kurama flips neatly in the air, careful not to let even a single garnet hair touch the glue-covered railing, and lands easily in the doorway. He eyes the doorknob for a brief moment and then shrugs, pushes it open, and casually catches the flower pot that tumbles down. It's a pretty little indigo-violet chrysanthemum, and Kurama caresses the petals with a smile before setting it safely aside and going to eat his dinner. The next morning, the water has been upgraded to paint. Thankfully, Kurama's stalker still can't seem to tell when he's in the apartment, so it's easy enough to avoid. Then there's the minefield of banana peels that gives Kurama pause, if only to wonder what happened to all the bananas. After that, the front door's knob is laced with itching powder. A glitter bomb. A stink bomb. An eraser trap. A poorly aimed mud ball in the middle of the street. Kurama, very well aware of how stubborn he himself can be as well as the fact that he has actually mellowed since childhood, evades them all with ease. When he slides through the Hokage's window, frustrated Chakra seething behind him, and gives the old man a bright smile, he gets an aggrieved shake of the man's head in return. This will not end well, Sarutobi warns him gravely, though there's a glimmer of reluctant amusement in his eyes. Do you intend to hold out forever, Kurama-kun? Kurama simply chuckles. Hardly, Hokage-sama, he answers cheerfully. Little boys tend to have short attention spans. And from Kakashi's increasingly frequent complaints, I assume the academy graduation is soon. That will be distraction enough, I think. Sarutobi concedes the point with an inclination of his head, and his expression grows somber. Kurama suspects his remembering Naruto's failing grades in the class, and his position as dead last. Yes, he murmurs, trailing off distractedly, but Kurama leaves him to his thoughts for the moment. Appearances can be deceiving. Kurama knows that better than anyone. The Jounin standby station is sparsely populated when Kurama slips through the door, having evaded his stalker for the moment. He's carrying a mission scroll from the Hokage, his first as a Konoha Jounin, and is entirely cheerful about the prospect of getting out of the village and actually doing something. Not that training isn't productive or distracting, but Kurama's been hunting Akatsuki members for the past year, which is rather more tense than Carter's. He pauses inside the doorway, giving himself 7 seconds to assess the occupants. They are familiar to him, for the most part, all Jounin he knew and fought with in another time. Hayato is by one wall, along with Yugao, speaking in hushed murmurs with their heads bent together. Shikaku has staked out one of the low tables to set up his shogi board, and is searching his surroundings for anyone who looks foolish enough to agree to a game. Inuzuka Tsume is wrestling with Kuromaru, everyone else giving them a wide berth, and several lower-level Jounin are playing what looks suspiciously like strip poker in the corner. Kurama looks at them all, lets himself feel a brief pang of loss and pain for those that were his, and then carefully, firmly tucks it away and steps into the room, headed for his target. As shinobi, they are all too discreet to turn and stare, but Kurama can feel their attention on him nevertheless. But he's had practice ignoring stares far more hostile than this, and slips around the arm of a couch without pause. Shiranui Genma and Namiashi Reidu lift their heads simultaneously from their lunches. Genma's brow arches in question, and Reidu blinks. Kurama hides the grin that wants to come out and instead inclines his head politely, offering the pair his scroll. Namiashi-san, Shiranui-san, he murmurs. From the Hokage. There's half a heartbeat of silence before Reidu reaches out and plucks the roll from his fingers, quickly breaking the seal and unfurling it. With Genma leaning over his shoulder, he reads the short missive, and then studies the mission details. A courier run? Demon, Genma mutters, even as he rises to his feet and stretches gracefully. But if Hokage-sama wants 3 Jounin on it, it's probably important. Flicking the senbon to the other side of his mouth, he offers the newest Jounin a brief nod. I'm Uzumaki Kurama, the redhead responds, offering the taller man a swift smile. Hokage-sama spoke highly of your skills as a team. I look forward to working with you. Call me Genma, the Takujo offers with an answering grin. It's going to be a long way to the Suna border if you're that formal all the time, Kurama-kun. Genma, Reidu sighs, his tone long-suffering. Apparently out of words, he simply shakes his head and then turns to Kurama. If you don't mind, you can call me Reidu as well. And I apologize in advance for my partner. Kurama just chuckles, understanding why the Hokage assigned him to these two rather than Kakashi for his first mission outside the village. They're one of the best pairs Konoha has, and as long as Kurama has known them they've always been together. It's all but impossible to find one without the other somewhere close behind. But they're also easygoing and cheerful, especially for assassination experts, and can put anyone at ease. It's nice to meet you both, he tells them, and it's entirely truthful. I'll join you here tomorrow morning, then? Dawn, Radu agrees, looking faintly regretful, and Genma laughs at him. Don't worry, Rai, he drawls lazily. I'll drag you out of your bed in time. Easy when I'm in it, after all. Radu goes crimson and splutters, hands waving wildly. Kurama laughs, leaping out of the way of the flailing Takujo, and thinks, I missed this. I missed them. And now they are here again. His luck's always been incredible, but this is simply astonishing. Restlessness draws his feet away from his apartment, back out into the village. It's mid-afternoon and the streets are crowded, the market bustling with mothers and off-duty shinobi. Kurama slips by them without pausing, caught up in his thoughts. This, at least, he never planned out with Sasuke, because they never ever hoped for such a situation, and now Kurama feels like he's been set adrift in an unknown sea. Naruto is nearby, though no longer dogging his steps, and Kurama remembers very well the empty, aching loneliness of being the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki but not knowing it. He wants to save his younger self from such things, wants to give him the home and family that Kurama himself never had, but he also knows just how many life-shaping occurrences will happen to the boy in the next few weeks. Mizuki's betrayal and Iruka's defense are a turning point, and Kurama is reluctant to change anything about it. The mission to Wave is another, but that. Perhaps their deaths were entirely meaningless in the long run, but Kurama still aches to save Haku, sweet and devoted and so reluctant to kill, and Zabuza, who hid his kindness behind talk of tools and a hard exterior. Haku was the one who taught him about precious people, after all, who changed his entire outlook yet again. Maybe this time Kurama can keep them from dying. Volunteering to go along with Kakashi and Team 7 should be easy enough. Tazuna is hardly likely to object to another trained nin with the secrets he's keeping, after all. And, while Kurama is reluctant to think that he can change everything, maybe he can give them a chance. Just one single chance. Sometimes, that's all it really takes in the end. By the time he gets back from this mission, graduation will have come and gone. Naruto will have learned what he is, what lives inside him, but he'll also have seen that it doesn't make him into a monster. It doesn't stop people from loving him. It's a lesson that Kurama would be hard-pressed to teach, and utterly invaluable. So he'll go on this mission, and when he comes back he'll contrive to meet the boy again. A simple exchange of names will ensure that he has a reason for taking custody of Naruto, and then? Kurama pauses on the corner, scrubbing one hand through his long hair in frustration and nearly pulling it out of its tail. What the hell comes after that? Kurama has been a shinobi for as long as he can remember, a full soldier for almost 10 years. He doesn't know anything about being a parental figure, a brother, even a role model. Konohamaru was the closest he ever came, and that was more two like personalities connecting than anything else, titles of boss aside. But, of course, Naruto is Kurama, more or less. Kurama knows exactly how he's grown up, how he's managed to survive this long and managed to become a shinobi. He understands the determination, the drive, the sheer overwhelming stubbornness that the boy possesses, and maybe that can be enough. Naruto doesn't need a father or a brother, he has those already, or will soon. But Kurama can certainly be a friend, and no one can ever have too many of those. Iruka locks up his classroom with a weary sigh, far too many papers balanced precariously on one arm. He both loves and loathes graduation, it's bittersweet, seeing his students move on and become genin. And then, of course, there's the sudden and abundant influx of paperwork that's sure to drive him mad before the week is through. That part he flat out hates, no ambiguity there. He casts a quick look at the test on the very top of the stack and can't quite hide his wince. There are only a few questions answered, and the rest of the page is covered in doodles and sloppily written ramblings. 3 guesses who it belongs to, and if the first 2 aren't Naruto they don't count. Iruka despairs of the boy, hates that he'll have to fail him, and he probably will, if his track record is any indication, but can't conscience sending an underprepared child out into the shinobi forces, even as a genin. especially as a genin. Naruto is. A round stone turns under his foot, and Iruka promptly loses his balance with a startled yelp. Instinctively, he throws his hands out to catch himself, and watches with a surge of resigned horror as 12 solid hours of grading shoots up into the air. He thinks, and only long years of practice as a teacher keep him from screaming it. And then a shadow blurs, too quick to truly see, and a flash of red distracts him from his paper's fate. Iruka registers it even as he twists his body around to catch himself, hitting the ground in a low crouch. Half a heartbeat later there's a gentle thump as someone else lands as well, and he looks up from a pair of battered and dusty shinobi sandals to the wrapped legs of black pants and then further up. Tattooed seals and scarred hands and leanly muscled arms under mesh, a wealth of crimson hair falling loose around an equally scarred face. The man is carrying a tall stack of papers, and it takes Iruka a moment to realize that they are his. This shinobi somehow managed to catch them all before they hit the ground. "Are you all right?" the redhead asks, brilliantly blue eyes sympathetically amused. He pauses and looks down at his burden, and then grimaces. "I'm sorry. They're all out of order now. I just reacted without thinking." But Iruka isn't quite listening anymore, because there aren't many redheads in Konoha, and even fewer wearing jounin vests. The man's identity connects with a snap, and Iruka blinks. "Ah," he says before he can stop himself. "You're the one Naruto's been trying to prank." There's a moment of silence, and then the redhead's eyebrows slowly creeps upward. "Naruto," he repeats after a second. "That's the blonde boy with a penchant for running over civilians." Iruka winces. He'd been wondering what the man had done to make Naruto so hell-bent on catching him. It's likely the man said something chastising, and as the majority of Naruto's cold treatment comes from the civilians, it must not have gone over well. Dragging a hand over his tightly bound hair, Iruka manages a nod. "Yes, he's one of my students," it said warily, ready to defend the boy if this man has heard anything. But there's not so much as a flicker of anger or disgust as the redhead simply nods. He tips his head to the side, long hair sliding bright and loose over his shoulder, and then an unexpected smile breaks across his features. "They are fairly clever pranks, for an academy student," he says, amusement clear in his voice. "Not quite up to catching a jounin yet, but I'm sure he'll get there." With a shake of his head, he glances up to meet Iruka's eyes. "I'm Kurama. It's nice to meet you, sensei." "Yumino Iruka." Iruka returns automatically, only belatedly realizing the lack of a family name. Before he can mention it or ask, though, Kurama has taken a step away and is tucking the papers under his arm. "Let me walk you home, Iruka-sensei," the jounin offers with a sweet, bright smile. "You're heading in the same direction as me, I think, and I could do with the company." Phrased like that, there's just about no way to politely refuse. Iruka hesitates, wavers, and then gives in with a sigh. "I'm perfectly capable of walking myself home," he protests, but since he's already falling into step with the redhead it's half-hearted at best. Kurama simply keeps smiling, letting Iruka take the lead. "Of course," he says easily, and it is, startlingly, not patronizing in the least. "You're a Chunin, and I'm sure you earned the rank. But I'm just wondering right now, and playing pack-mule is as worthwhile a pastime as any, I think." He deftly dodges the stealthy grab Iruka makes for his tests and chuckles. Iruka gives in to what is clearly inevitable with bad grace and an impolite grumble, but doesn't protest again. He won't admit it, but it is nice to have company on his usually lonely walk home. It's just past twilight, and most of those with friends or family are safely tucked away, eating dinner and enjoying the warmth of companionship. In contrast, Iruka's apartment is cold and lonely and barren. It's not that he has no friends. Mizuki is certainly one, and there's always Genma, who looked after him following the Kyuubi attack, and Kotetsu and Izumo, whom Genma did the same for. Those three are very nearly family, and Iruka loves them, but he can't bring himself to depend on them all the time. Not when he's village-bound and all but a desk shinobi, and Genma is Einbyu and the terrible twosome have regular missions. So Kurama, no matter how strange though he's hardly the strangest jounin Iruka has ever met, is a comfort, and a welcome one. He's peaceful to be around, too, with a calm and easy air, full of quiet confidence and offhand grace. And then, out of nowhere, Kurama says, "It's incredible what you do." Iruka blinks, caught entirely flat-footed. What? He manages after a second, because he's just a teacher, and if Iruka remembers the rumors correctly, this man took out an entire organization of S-class missing nin in less than a year. Kurama huffs a soft laugh, tipping his head back to where the first stars of the evening are beginning to show through the indigo twilight. Teaching, he clarifies. That you're able to do it, and do it well, that's incredible. Casting a sideways glance at the Chunin, he smiles again and shakes his head faintly. Anyone can kill, given the motivation and training. But to make someone want to learn, to give them the foundation on which to build an entire life, that's something so far beyond what most people can do. I admire you for it, Iruka-sensei. All good teachers, really. As a child I was awful at everything, and it was only my academy sensei who had hope for me. He's the only reason I got where I am today. It's said with too much good humor to be anything but true. Nevertheless, Iruka is entirely reluctant to believe it, because Kurama has the same air about him that Kakashi does, the one that says I have seen the very worst this world has to offer and it has not broken me. It's a dare, a bet, a reckless declaration entirely backed by fact and experience, and Iruka wonders how many have fallen to it. Fallen for it, and then found out far too late that Kurama is everything he claims to be and more. He would be proud of you, Iruka says, and perhaps it's a wild and unfounded assumption, but Iruka looks at this strong, brave, scarred shinobi and thinks of the hopeless child he claims to have been. Maybe it's self-centered, but for a moment all Iruka can see is Naruto, bold and bright and forever laughing. Bad at everything except pranking, with dreams a size too big for him, but so determined. So brave in his own way. Iruka wants this future, wants to watch someone like Naruto prove just what an incredible shinobi he can be. Maybe, he thinks, wildly optimistic, maybe someday he'll be like Kurama. Kurama looks at him and smiles, and murmurs, "You think so? I'd like to believe it." And if his expression has a faintly wry edge to it, if there's just a hint of sadness in his clear blue eyes, Iruka is too distracted by his thoughts of the present to notice. Kurama meets his new teammates at the Jounin standby station a few minutes before the sun clears the horizon, katana on his back, hair in a loose plait, and heart light. Talking with Iruka has always made him feel better regardless of the subject, and even if Kurama can never have Naruto's relationship with the man again, maybe he can have something else. A friendship, instead of a brotherhood, and that's all right, because the man who was Kurama's big brother died when Konoha fell for the last time, and Kurama would not replace him for all the gold or good luck in the world. He lands in the street, not even raising to dust under his sandals, and smiles at the two Takujo in greeting. Genma is the same as ever, lounging against the side of the building with a senbon in his mouth and an easy grin on his lips, and Kurama has seen him look the same through blood and fire and battle, week-long runs with only a scattered handful of hours spent sleeping or resting. For all that he's not a full Jounin, Genma is one of the pillars of Konoha. Not overtly powerful, not flashy, not in any position of authority, but steady, grounded, dependable, which is worth far more than a few flashy jutsus could ever be. Reidu looks far less awake than his partner, slouched over and yawning almost without pause. His eyes are glazed and his face is slack, and Kurama and Genma exchange amused glances over his head. Captain of an ANBU team or no, the man's a wreck in the mornings without adrenaline in his system. With a huff, Genma tosses a scroll into the air and catches it deftly. "Got the mission," he says lightly. "Who wants to play target and carry the thing?" "I will," Kurama offers, already gathering chakra in his palm. He closes his eyes, focuses, and sweeps his fingers over his left arm from elbow to wrist, and the seal tattoos their flare with violet light. He takes the scroll, sets it against his skin, and feels it vanish into the dimensional pocket the seals create. Genma whistles, low and impressed. "Sealing, here? Handy." "Very," Kurama agrees, letting the chakra fade and the seals go dormant again. "No one but me will be able to retrieve it now, unless they can somehow manage to entirely deconstruct my seals." There's a thoughtful pause, and then Genma grins, pushes off the wall, and comes to drape an arm around Kurama's shoulders. "I want you on all my courier missions," he says cheerfully. Sealing scrolls are useful, but only to a point, and I like this method. You guys are so loud. Just move out already, Radu grumbles, waving a hand at them to shoo them forward even as the end of his sentence dissolves in another yawn. He stumbles past them and then blurs into motion, headed for the gates. Another exchange of amused glances is all Genma and Kurama have time for before they are crossing the rooftops as well, almost too fast for the eye to catch, and falling into formation behind the team leader. Even at a run, Kurama spares one single glance back as they disappear into the dense trees surrounding the village. It's peaceful and quiet, calm and at rest. By the time they get back, Mizuki's betrayal will have shaken things, but not enough. Konoha will still be unprepared for what is coming. Kurama has planned, and taken steps, and thrown his whole heart into the idea of changing everything. It's about time to see if all of it pays off. The mission, perhaps predictably, goes to hell without so much as a pause to breathe. With a low snarl, Kurama blocks a clone's axe strike with his sword and whirls past too quick to catch, beheading it with a single easy slide. Sasuke's katana, surrendered when he finally became too ill to use it, sings as it cuts through the air. It's not Kusanagi, broken long ago, nor is it anything incredibly special, but it's Sasuke's, well cared for and crafted by a master, with Kurama's own seals in the metal itself. The clone turns back to water with a splash, and Kurama hurtles forward, taking out the nin locked in combat with Radu. Radu doesn't thank him, and Kurama doesn't wait for thanks. This is a mission, not a stage tournament, and Konoha shinobi are famous for their teamwork for reasons just like this. Any enemy shinobi going into a fight with Konoha knows that rather than one-on-one matches, like they might face against another village, with Konoha it's always going to be a melee, and rarely in their favor. Genma! Radu calls, evading a Doton jutsu and lunging forward, the black blade of his poisoned sword a shadow in the half-light beneath the trees. Kurama ducks a kunai that passes close enough for him to feel it skim his hair, then throws one of his own, with the addition of an exploding tag. The force of it, modified and amplified by the seals Kurama uses to make them himself, shakes the forest, and gives Kurama time to dart back to his team leader's side. Laying traps, he answers, even as he pulls a square of paper from the inside pocket of his Jounin vest. They've got reinforcements headed our direction, maybe 4 minutes out. Unknown numbers, approaching from the southeast. Hell, Radu mutters, and then twists to the side, catching a descending kunai on his sword. He kicks his attacker, spins to the side, and Kurama meets the enemy nin with bared teeth and a snarl, slamming one of the papers into the woman's chest. There's a crackle of violet light, a scream, and then the woman drops like a stone. Go, the Takujo orders. I can hold them off until Genma's done. Meet at point D at noon. Kurama bites back the instinctive protest against abandoning a comrade, but has been a shinobi long enough to know a sound strategy when it's presented to him. These nin are after the scroll, have clearly been hired to retrieve it, and that means they're after him. While running will doubtless tell them exactly who's carrying the item, it's the best choice. Kurama is fast and skilled, and dividing their forces will give Radu and Genma the edge they need to win quickly. Letting out a short, sharp breath, Kurama dips his head. Right. Make sure you get there, he growls, slides his katana back into its sheath, and leaps forward in a blur of speed. He's not quite the yellow flash, not yet, but when he tries, there are few in any time who can catch him. The Kyuubi no Kitsune always knew how to run, at the very least. They're on the very border of fire country, practically shoulder to shoulder with lightning, and it's far from comfortable. The peace is uneasy at best, bought with death and underhanded dealings, and there's no peace at all when they are shinobi villages hired to outwit each other. Kurama is very careful to keep to his side of the border as he runs, marking it in his mind and maintaining his distance. Behind him, nowhere near as swift through the trees as he is, are the other nin. They're making enough noise to alert even the most brain-dead academy student, and Kurama mentally scoffs. Fire country forests are special, certainly, but they are hardly unique, and that level of noise is simply an embarrassment. He leaves traps as he goes, seals triggered by proximity and quickly set tripwires with exploding tags, anything he can throw down on the fly. As much as he hates it, This is exactly the type of situation he's experienced with, running and fighting and avoiding pursuers. At one time, maybe he would have rejected such an idea, stood and fought and died for it. But Madara's forces outnumbered them by a huge amount, always, and all the remnants of Konoha quickly learned that sometimes retreat and flight truly were the best options. Ahead of him, there's a faint spark of chakra, a small flicker of light, and Kurama narrows his eyes. He's fairly familiar with the jutsus that Reidou and Genma use, and that wasn't them. They're also a good 7 minutes behind him, even moving fast, and they'd have had to already have taken their opponents out. There's no doubt as to their skills, no question that they both have earned the ANBU tattoos on their shoulders many times over, but even for the pair of them that's pushing things. So, enemy, then. Kurama takes a breath and launches himself forward, out of the trees. He lands at a run, up and moving before his pursuers can even register the change, and takes advantage of their sudden rush to get to the ground to flick his hands up into what is still, even after so long, his most familiar seal. In a heartbeat there are 5 of him, and the 4 clones split off without hesitation, falling into ready stances even as he increases the distance between them. These enemy nin are Chunan, maybe a Jounin 2 at the most mixed in, and 4 clones are enough to handle that. Were he any good at genjutsu, this would be the perfect time for a chameleon jutsu, but even the addition of the Kyuubi no Kitsune's chakra and skill can't make up for his own lack in that area. Kurama curses under his breath and leaps forward as the ground gives way, hands reaching up to grab him. Another 4 quick signs and he hisses, Doton, compression. With a groaning rumble the earth collapses in on the shinobi beneath the surface, and Kurama hooks a hand around a thick branch, kicks of the tree, and flips back to the ground. There's someone ahead of him, his sensitive ears can pick out the rasp of breath, but it sounds quick and panicked. Young, Kurama thinks, heart clenching, but he grits his teeth and draws Sasuke's katana again. Ginkei's, Sasuke had always called it, no matter how much Kurama mocked him for his lack of imagination. But thinking of Sasuke, still an ache, still a fierce sharp regret, right now is no. No. He doesn't want to kill the Chunan in the bushes, likely only recently promoted, but they are both shinobi on a mission, both with a duty to carry out. Kurama has learned a lot about duty since Madara returned. I won't ask you to let me pass, he says. But I don't want to fight you. The breathing catches, just faintly, and there's the slight soft hiss of a weapon being drawn. Kurama sets his feet and steadies himself, just in time for the boy in the bushes to come charging out. He's clumsy with his wakizashi, though, too slow to even begin to match Kurama, who would have been a Kage in another life, had things turned out better. Kurama sidesteps, half-turns, and cracks the hilt of Ginkei's into the back of the boy's skull. Too soft to be a killing blow, if only just mercy is something they still have time for, here, and Kurama loves with a tearing, wrenching ache that he no longer has to kill those who cross his path. Perhaps doing so would be better, smarter, but Kurama has never been like that unless forced to be. Kurama spares half an instant to glance back over his shoulder, even as a surge of fire rises above the treetops. He smiles faintly, fondly, because for someone so level-headed Genma has always been suspiciously fond of Kaiten jutsus. Then, with a short sigh, he slips Ginkei's back into its sheath and bounds up into the branches. Should have been a freaking A rank, not a B, Genma mutters, leaning back against the wide bole of a tree as he tries to control his breathing. Next to him, Reidou nods, swiping the back of his hand over his brow. Trade treaty from a mining town, he says with a shrug. Should have expected it. These missions always SCK. Conceding the point with a snort, Genma checks the position of the sun and murmurs, almost noon. The tone is non-committal, but Reidou's been his partner for long enough to hear the thread of concern in the man's voice, well buried as it is. For his part, though, Reidou can't quite bring himself to worry. Uzumaki Kurama seems level-headed, skilled, and entirely competent, without the ego a lot of good shinobi get. Beyond that, he brought in several incredibly infamous missing nin, and that's impressive. He's fast, too, and even if he took the circuitous route to throw off his pursuers, he'll likely be arriving soon. And, as if summoned by the thought, a shape drops through the branches to land lightly on the ground in front of them, hardly even stirring the leaves. As he rises, Reidou takes a quick inventory, and is unsurprised by the lack of wounds. Kurama looks a bit ruffled, and there are leaves and twigs in his now loose hair, but beyond that Radu can't see any damage. The scroll, he asks, because his first priority has to be the mission, regardless of how much he wants to make sure he's not missing anything. Kurama smiles at him, bright and entirely cheerful, and dips his head. Delivered, along with a warning about how much opposition we faced, he answers. You're both all right? A little singed, Genma acknowledges without care, but we've had worse. Radu barely restrains the urge to roll his eyes. We wouldn't be singed if you hadn't set off your own trap. It got them, didn't it? Don't stress so much, Rai, you're gonna go bald, and then I'll have to get myself a better-looking sugar daddy. Quite certain that his skin is approximately the same shade as Kurama's hair now, Radu clamps down on the urge to splutter and just slaps his hands over his face. He's a private person, and Genma is the walking, talking definition of an overshare. 2 years, he says, not caring if it comes out muffled and all but inaudible. Genma, I am 2 years older than you. Stop that. Quiet laughter cuts the argument off before it can progress further, and Radu drops his hands to see that Kurama is turned away from them, shoulders shaking, head bowed so that his long hair curtains his face. The sound is unmistakable, though, sweet and warm and full, and Radu smiles in spite of himself. It's not that Kurama is slow to laugh, exactly, but he can seem so melancholy at times that each bout of mirth somehow feels like a victory. Judging by the curve of Genma's lips and the tilt of his brows, he feels the same. Sorry, Kurama gasps, face still hidden. It's just you sound like and people say shinobi SCK at being married. Radu has the rare pleasure of watching Genma gape, momentarily speechless, and laughs himself. If I've managed to survive those 3 chicks he raised for this long, I think I deserve a better title than husband, he says dryly. Maybe saint. One of them alone could give a man grey hairs to rival carcasses. Who the hell says you're the husband? Genma demands, and there's a flush high up on his sharp cheekbones. Chicks? Kurama asks at the same moment. Radu, almost gleeful at finally getting one back at his partner, gives Genma an innocent smile. Well, I was assuming you were the wife, given your skills at housework. General, I'm sorry, was I stereotyping? Genma splutters, and Radu looks over at the redhead who's still watching in amusement. After the Kyuubi, there were a lot of orphans in the village, he explains. Genma took in Kotetsu, Izumo, and Iruka to look after whenever he wasn't on a mission. All 3 of them are monsters, though Izumo hides it better than most. Before Kurama can answer, though, a pair of long arms wind around Radu's neck, and Genma all but drapes himself over his side. Screw you, the younger man growls. I'll be best DMN wife you ever had, BSTRD. Let's go home and I'll show you. Radu goes brilliant red, just as the last blush was finally fading, and Kurama is laughing again. Genma grins in triumph, sharp and wicked, and only protests a little when Radu whacks him around the head in desperate, embarrassed revenge. They return to the village to the sight of well-ordered chaos, and share a glance between them. Anbu are out and visible, patrolling the walls, and where there are normally only 2 Chunan manning any one gate, 2 Chunan and 2 Jounin greet them as they approach. Radu-san, Genma-san, Uzuki Yugao says, rising to her feet and inclining her head. Heiate is at her back, but his eyes are on the forest still, not allowing himself to be distracted by the returning team. You're back a little late. Radu waves a weary hand in acknowledgement. By 3 days, he agrees. The opposing side hired Kumo-nin. What's happening here? Yugao's eyes narrow faintly, but she answers, one of the academy instructors turned traitor the night before last. He tried to convince one of the students that failed to steal a Kenjutsu scroll for him. The Hokage hasn't released the details yet, but he was stopped, and all shinobi forces above Genin have been put on alert in case he wasn't working alone. Genma whistles lowly. Wow. Hell of a thing to do. The kid okay? Yugao dips her head in a short, sharp nod, even as she checks their mission scroll off and waves them through the gate. He's fine, last I heard. A little shaken up, but that's entirely understandable for a student. There's true, if faint, concern in her voice, and Kurama spares her a quick smile as he follows his teammates into the village. For all that the civilians were always antagonistic with their glares and whispers, for the most part the shinobi of Konoha were more understanding of life as a Jinchuriki. It's nice to see that carries over. I'll turn in the report. Reidu volunteers with a weary sigh, waving Gunma and Kurama off as they come to an intersection of streets. You guys are dismissed. Thank you. Gunma looks at him for a moment and then rolls his eyes. I'll pick up lunch, he says. We're all hungry and filthy, and we've been running since yesterday. What do you want, Rai? Reidu favors him with a quick smile. Ichiraku, he suggests. Done. Gunma reaches out, quick as a snake, and snags Kurama's arm as he makes to disappear. Oh, no. I don't think so, Kurama-kun. You're going to eat if I have to force-feed you. March. Kurama takes one look at the mother hen expression his new friend is wearing, rolls his eyes, and marches. Now I understand why Reidu calls them your chicks, he mutters. If you start making hen noises like Elba does, I'll string you up by your ankles in the forest of death, Gunma threatens, steering him towards the familiar stand. After a quick glance to make sure Kurama is walking obediently, he releases him and ducks under the awning. Kurama hears him call a cheerful greeting to Tucci, and is just about to follow when someone bursts out of the stall and collides with him, nearly knocking him over. You, a loud voice cries, and Kurama blinks down at the finger pointing at his face, then at the bright blonde head almost level with his elbow. Me, he says agreeably. Then he reaches out, ignoring the boy's stiffening, and carefully ruffles his hair. Those were some good pranks, kid, he says warmly. The one with the glue was especially inspired. There's a long moment of silence as Naruto stares at him, jaw gaping and blue eyes stunned. Then he puffs himself up like a rooster and beams. I almost got you, he crows. I know I did. 'Cause the future Hokage is awesome at everything. Kurama chuckles softly. Future Hokage, he asks. The old man had better watch out, then. He reaches out and taps the worn Hittite Naruto is wearing. Genin is a good start. Naruto grins widely at him, and Kurama feels a faint pang as he remembers being this boisterous and innocent. I'll make Jounin in a year, he boasts, believe it. And who are you, so that I know our future Hokage's name? Kurama asks. This is as good an opening as he'll ever be handed, a random enough chance that even the Sandame won't see anything suspicious in it. Uzumaki Naruto, Genin of Konoha, the boy declares proudly, and Kurama makes himself go very, very still. How interesting, he hears himself say from a distance, because this is it, this is the beginning of the change. Yes, Akatsuki is already gone and Nagato's eyes are no longer a threat, but this is the real change, the one that will show the most in Kurama's little double. How very, very interesting. Because, you see, my name is Uzumaki Kurama. Sarutabi sighs and rubs at the bridge of his nose, wondering if he's simply seeing double and that's why his desk looks like a file cabinet exploded on top of it. Team assignments are always a tedious time, and his personal investment in this particular class doesn't change that. The DMN Traitorous Academy teacher hasn't helped matters any, either. I'm too old for this, Sarutabi thinks, restraining another sigh with difficulty. He was too old when he passed his hat on to Minato, and he's too ancient for it now, when Minato is dead and his son is a genin hated and feared by the civilians, hated because he's feared. It's not fair, and while Sarutabi is never one to indulge in such thinking, has been a shinobi far too long to assume it bears any weight at all, but sometimes even his practicality is overwhelmed in the face of the bad hand Naruto drew in this life. Right now, as it stands, the only successor who won't turn the village inside out within a month is Tsunade, and she's sworn never to come back. Maybe he'll have the hat until he dies, and that's a grim thought indeed. Danzo will doubtless use the chance to snatch up the position with haste, pry it right from his cold, dead fingers. While Sarutabi believes that Danzo believes he has Konoha's best interests at heart, he doesn't think the execution of those interests will result in anything less than tragedy. And Danzo will never see it, because as much of an old war hawk as he is, he still has an idealized notion of humanity, and it's never sat well with Sarutabi. The sigh finally escapes, heavy and low, and Sarutabi turns back to his paperwork, berating himself for letting his mind wander. He really is too old, but there's no alternative to be had. At least for a few more years. He's smiling to himself, picturing the reactions of the general populace to learning that their new Hokage is the demon brat, when a soft thump alerts him to a presence on his windowsill. It's common courtesy for ninja to announce their arrival in such a way. For all that is getting on in years, the last 3 assassins who managed to get this far all realized very quickly indeed why Sarutobi Hiruzen is still called the god of shinobi. He looks up and blinks, startled by the sight of a wealth of unmistakable red hair and those ocean blue eyes. Uzumaki Kurama stares back at him, mouth set into a neutral line, which is out of character from what Sarutobi has seen of the cheerful young man. He's still in his dusty and battered mission clothes, bristling with weapons, and there are leaves in his hair. It's the work of half a second to recall Namiyashi Reidu's report, and Sarutobi frowns, wondering what pressing business Kurama could have so soon after returning. And then a shock of sunshine yellow hair peeks over Kurama's shoulder as arms tighten around his neck, and Naruto pulls himself into view. His eyes, a sky blue several shades brighter than Kurama's ocean blue, are confused and perhaps a little hurt, wide with uncertainty but also a bewildered sort of stubbornness. He doesn't say anything, and that's perhaps the biggest clue of all that something has happened. Silently, Kurama slides off the sill and drops into a crouch, letting Naruto down. The boy wavers, clearly torn between staying with his newly found cousin and running up to the Hokage like he usually does. Finally, after a long moment, he settles on giving Sarutobi a fairly weak smile and twisting his fingers into the hem of Kurama's shirt. Clearly, this is not going to be an easy conversation. "Why don't you sit, Naruto, Kurama-kun?" Sarutobi suggests at length, indicating the chairs in front of his desk. There's another pause where he wonders if he'll be obeyed, and then Kurama tips his head in acknowledgement and steps forward, wary and graceful. Sarutobi has thought quite a bit about his options in regards to the two of them, and while he can safely say he's considered nearly every angle, his heart still gives a pang at the sight of shuttered eyes and a blank face. From everything he has been told, has observed himself, Kurama is given to smiling, to cheer. But has deprived this lost young man of knowing his little cousin, did it willingly and with full realization of his actions, and even though Sarutobi can't quite bring himself to regret it, he does hate to put Kurama through any more pain. And Naruto? With a weary sigh, Sarutobi steeples his fingers in front of him and regards the two, wondering how to start. Perhaps predictably, Naruto steals the chance before he can come to a decision. He sits bolt upright in his chair, blue eyes sparking with sudden, pig-headed determination, and cries, "You didn't tell me I had a cousin, Jiji." Sarutobi studies the blonde for a moment before he inclines his head. "No," he agrees. "I did not. Kurama-kun has been in the village less than a month, and before that I was entirely unaware he existed." At that, Kurama's blank look softens slightly, flickers into something that might be understanding or simply relief, and he reaches out to drop a hand on Naruto's head. "The Hokage wanted to make sure he could trust me," he explains softly. "If I was an enemy trying to get into the village or something, that would be a good way in, and it would hurt you if I really was an enemy. Hokage-sama was just trying to protect you." The mulish set of Naruto's face doesn't change. But I believe Kurama-kun has proved to be all he says he is," Sarutobi cut in, "though that's not entirely true. But it's enough for now," and the sudden, burgeoning hope in Naruto's expression is more than sufficient to convince him that this is the right thing to do. He smiles with all the warmth he feels towards this unpredictable, unnervingly bright boy, so very much a mix of his charismatic father and vivacious mother. "Uzumaki Naruto, meet Uzumaki Kurama, your cousin." Naruto hovers in one corner of the room, almost afraid to take even a step. The red-headed man Kurama, his cousin, and that still equally amazing and terrifying and impossible to believe is on the other side, next to the tall and overflowing bookshelf, tucking scrolls back into their places. He wonders what he should do: walk in and make himself at home? Kick back on the comfy-looking sofa and see if it lives up to its appearance? Sneak back out the window and hope Kurama, clearly a skilled jounin, can't track him down? Vaguely, still half-dazed, Naruto wonders if there's a shinobi rule for dealing with this kind of situation. Sakura-chan would know, but Naruto's clueless. He's felt that way so often these last few days, and it's really starting to get on his nerves. In lieu of anything else, he occupies himself with looking around. He's seen Kurama's apartment before, if only briefly while he was laying traps, but it's still rather startling how bare it is, especially compared to Naruto's own cluttered rooms. About the only thing present in the apartment is paper, reams of it, pieces in all shapes and sizes covered with strange, complicated symbols. Some of them are finished, tacked up on walls and glittering strangely here and there where the light hits them. Others are stacked in teetering piles in the corners, precarious and listing. They're vaguely familiar, something Naruto is probably supposed to know about, but he's spent half his time at the academy skipping class and the other half goofing off during it, so his knowledge of the basics is rather lacking. Still, they look neat, and from the tattoos covering Kurama's arms they are apparently important to him. Naruto has heard people talking about what a good shinobi the new Jounin is, and he wonders if those drawings have something to do with it. "Would you like something to drink, Naruto-kun?" The soft voice jolts Naruto out of his preoccupation, and he twists around to see that the redhead has finished putting away his gear and is hovering at the doorway of the kitchen, one finger nervously twisting around the thin braid in his hair. He meets the man's eyes, and it's weird how off balance he feels, like some giant rug just got wrenched out from under his feet, and he's still spinning in the air, waiting to come crashing down. But one glance at Kurama is enough to see that he feels just as uncertain about all of this. That alone gives Naruto the courage to offer up a wide grin. "Milk," he suggests hopefully. Kurama hesitates, then pulls a face. "Only if you like the sour type," he says wryly. "I just returned from a week-long mission, and I'm afraid I didn't quite manage to clean everything out of my fridge before I left. I have tea, though, if you don't mind it." While he's never been overly fond of the bitter stuff Hokage drinks, Naruto agrees, just for something to say, and Kurama flashes him a quick smile almost like he knows what he's thinking before he retreats into the kitchen. Naruto follows him, steps stupidly hesitant even though he can't bring himself to walk more confidently. In the space of 2 hours, he's gone from being an orphan outcast to having a cousin who smiles at him and offers to make tea. "It's, you know," Kurama says, voice muffled as he rummages through the cupboards, "technically, as long as you're a genin you're also a legal adult. I'm your cousin, Naruto-kun, but that doesn't have to mean anything more or less than you'd like it to." Naruto pulls a face of his own. Adults always have to say things in the most complicated ways possible. It's like they're trying to be misunderstood. "You mean?" There's a soft huff of bright laughter, and Kurama casts him an amused look over one shoulder. "I mean that, even though I'd like to have you live with me, Naruto-kun, you're under no obligation to. We're family, but we're also strangers, and as much as I'd like to be a family to you, it's entirely your decision." His smile turns sad, and he looks away, back to the cupboard, with a faint sigh that Naruto likely wasn't supposed to hear. "I'm also not sure how well I'd do being any sort of mentor," he adds bluntly. "My village was destroyed a long time ago, and I've been mostly on my own since then." That's the answer to another question Naruto has been trying not to contemplate. He swallows, suddenly feeling very small, and asks, "You mean you're not from Konoha?" In half a heartbeat, Kurama is right in front of him, crouched down so that they are at eye level. His blue eyes are sharp and fierce, and seem to pick up the meaning behind the question without Naruto having to clarify any further. "No," the Jounin says, an edge of fire and tempered steel to his words. "No, Naruto, or I would never have left you to grow up alone. I didn't know that Kushina had had a son, or believe me, I would have been here the day after I found out, demanding to raise you myself." Naruto looks at him and he believes. No one's ever looked at him the way this man is, except for maybe Iruka-sensei the other night, when that shuriken was lodged in his back and he still managed to smile at Naruto, the reason for it. He believes, and before he can stop himself, he blurts, "Can I?" Kurama blinks, and Naruto quickly clarifies, "Can I live with you?" He's never had a family beyond Iruka and the Sandaime, but he's always wanted one. And with Kurama here in front of him, his cousin offering a new life entirely different from his old one. Well, Naruto's never been the type to hesitate over anything, and when it's something he wants this much, he'll do everything in his power to grab it. Kurama smiles, bright and soft and clearly, honestly happy, and dips his head. "Of course," he murmurs, and rises gracefully to his feet, dropping a firm, steadying hand on Naruto's shoulder. "Come on, Naruto-kun, you can have the second bedroom. I'll help you move your stuff in tomorrow." Naruto thinks of his cluttered, messy, lonely apartment, only a few scattered mementos to give it any kind of life, and reaches out to wrap his fingers around Kurama's larger hand. This apartment is even emptier than Naruto's in regards to stuff, but regardless, it feels warm and cozy as Kurama grips his hand in return and beams down at him. "Thanks, Kuramani!" Naruto cries, and his never meant anything more. Kurama lies on his bed, flat on his back as he stares up at the ceiling above him. Naruto's breathing is soft and deep across the hall, comforting and unsettling all at once. He's still wavering, still wondering if this is truly the right path to take, but then he remembers the look on Naruto's face outside the ramen stand, and then again in the kitchen, as though day had just broken for the first time, confusion washing into stunned comprehension as he stared at Kurama as though the Jounin had just handed him the Hokage's hat without any strings attached. With a soft sigh, Kurama drapes his arm over his eyes, trying to imagine what this change will bring. He and Sasuke had long ago discarded the notion of keeping events as close to those of their timeline as possible. It didn't work. The first time, and the small edge that knowing how things would turn out gave them wasn't worth the chance of failing again. But this is a change just as massive as wiping Akatsuki off the map. With a mentor, an immediate family to guide and care for him, how will Naruto change? Kurama never wanted this Naruto to become him. It's one of the many reasons he went back in time in the first place, but the thought that they might not even be similar is entirely disquieting. Something stirs beneath his skin, shifts and surges and then recedes again as soon as it's gotten his attention. Kurama blinks his eyes open, sitting up and dropping his arm. One of the seals on his right arm, directly over the pulse point, is glowing black, somehow managing to be brilliant even in the moonlit darkness. Cautiously, Kurama lays a hand over it, judging the feel of the chakra, and then snorts at what he finds. Finally decided to wake up, BSE, he asks. Even though it's rhetorical, the force in the seal shifts again, somehow projecting smug ignosamething. "You'dn't pay attention, brat, get down here," annoyed. Rolling his eyes, Kurama settles cross-legged on the bed and drops his hands onto his knees. All right, I heard you the first time. I'm coming." Releasing a long, slow breath, he lets his eyes fall shut, concentrates on everything and nothing at all until white light blossoms behind closed lids. There's the scent of green on the air, something warm and growing, with an undertone of damp earth and old, dry leaves. "You've been redecorating," Kurama drawls, opening his eyes again and arching a brow at the dark-haired man seated across from him on a fallen tree. "Sorry to break it to you, brat, but your mindscape is hardly the most interesting place to languish, even when it doesn't look like the inside of a saw," Uchiha Obito informs him sardonically. Kurama grins, surveying the lush fire country forest surrounding them, a pool of perfectly still, clear water to one side and a full moon hanging above them. No, I like it. Very peaceful. Very green." Obito rolls his one remaining eye. "Shut up. If I'm going to be stuck in a effing seal, I'd at least like it to have pretty scenery." "It's not like anything would change if I did let you out," Kurama points out, managing to strangle his amusement with difficulty. "You're pretty much a chakra impression right now, idiot." "Oh, like you've got even half a leg to stand on calling somebody else that, brat. As soon as I'm out of here, I'm going to kick my butt, subject me to the cruelest of tortures imaginable, raze the village to the ground, make my life a living, breathing hell. Should I stop now, or did I miss one?" Obito blows out a long, heavy sigh and pinches the bridge of his nose, as though Kurama is the hard one to deal with here. "Shut up. Just I don't even know what I did in my life to deserve this." Kurama snorts. "The near destruction of our entire world ring a bell. Oh, go to hell. Even. That's not enough to be forced to deal with you." But there's humor in the Uchiha dark gaze, reluctant as it is, and Kurama smiles back at him. Obito rolls his eye again, then hesitates. After several seconds of silence, he says, "You know, I'll never be able to go back to being the idiotic, loudmouthed brat from team, but no matter how far I go, whether it's rise or fall, that brat is still me. Kurama blinks at the other man. You heard my thoughts. I felt your angst, Obito corrects with another eye roll. In the 4 years that Obito's been, willingly, trapped in the seal, Kurama's gotten that expression from him more times than he's gotten it from Jiraiya, Tsunade, Sakura, and Iruka combined. There's so much of it, brat, it wasn't hard. And it's not that hard to guess why you're twisted up in knots. The kid's still you. He'll always be you. He's just a different possibility. There's another long moment of silence, and then Kurama huffs out a reluctant laugh. You know, for someone who's a megalomaniacal mass-murdering psychopath, you're unnervingly good at reading people. Was a megalomaniacal mass-murdering psychopath, thank you. I'm reformed. Last time I came for a visit you threatened to string me up from the ceiling by my own intestines. It's a work in progress. Surely you of all people don't expect everyone to get things right on the very first try. Regardless of the caustic tone, Obito is smiling again, the deep scars on his right side pulling the expression into something that's dangerously close to endearing. Kurama mutters, pressing his hands over his eyes. Could you not do that, please? It gives me hives to see the scourge of the elemental nations looking cute. A derisive snort is his only answer, and there's another pause. It's comfortable, though, both of them enjoying the gentle night breeze as it carries the scent of lilies past them. Naruto basks in the peace of this place, even as he appreciates the irony that Uchiha Obito, one of the least peaceful souls he's ever met in all possible meanings of the phrase least peaceful, was the one to create it. I have a sealing question for you, Obito says finally, humor fully absent from his voice now. Kurama cracks an eye open to study him, but the Uchiha is far too good at holding his poker face to let anything slip. My favorite kind, the redhead responds cheerfully. Maybe I'll even answer it if you're polite. That earns him another huff, this one indignant, but Obito says without pause, Minato-sensei was able to transfer his Hiraishin seal to other people or places with a touch, and then use it as though it was the original. Could you do that? With any seal? Kurama tilts his head, studying the other man curiously. I'm not entirely sure, actually. In theory, it's as simple as fine-tuning your chakra control in regards to a seal that's present on your body and then visualizing its replication with enough clarity and focus that it recreates itself. With as little as a touch. I've never tried it, but it's likely I could do it with enough practice. Then start practicing, Obito tells him bluntly. As soon as you're competent, let me know. Eye going dark with distance and preoccupation, he subsides back into his seat on the log, lacing his fingers in his lap. Kurama knows that expression, especially after 4 years of witnessing it close up. Obito is scheming, mind whirling through plots and plans and possible outcomes, considering and discarding options more quickly than anyone but a Noro could manage. It's futile to interrupt him when he gets like this, as Kurama has long since learned. Instead of trying, he flops back to the ground, stretching out on his back and twisting into a long, spine-popping arch. Silence falls, and the moon inches across the sky. Finally, after what is likely hours, Obito sighs and unfolds himself, rising to his feet. You were drooling over that Kaiten jutsu I showed you last week, he says. Still want to learn it? Kurama bolts to his feet without hesitation, languidness forgotten and his smile bordering on a grin. The fire dragon flame bullet? Yes, please. Obito rolls his eye again, sighing grumpily like he's about to undergo a terrible ordeal, but there's a reluctant smile pulling at the corners of his mouth, too. Kurama's willing to count that as a win. Naruto-kun. Naruto-kun, it's time to wake up. You have training today. Naruto groans and attempts to drag his blankets over his head, hoping to shut out the weak light already starting to fill the room and the soft but insistent voice above him. For half a second he can almost imagine it worked, but then a weight dips the mattress beside him and a hand gently but firmly shakes his shoulder. Up, Naruto-kun, the voice urges, sounding amused, and Naruto groans again as he forces his eyes open. The blurry blob of red and tan above him wavers for an instant before resolving into his cousin's face, smiling down at him. Kuramani, he manages after a dazed second. Up, Kurama repeats, reaching out to tweak his nose with a soft huff of laughter. You have to meet your team in an hour. Go shower and get dressed, and then come eat. I'll have breakfast ready by the time you're done. He stands with a grace that should be entirely illegal for this hour of the morning, prudently dragging the blanket with him and easily evading Naruto's groggy attempt to reclaim it. Before Naruto can make so much as a sound of protest or point out that, judging by the pattern of the past 2 days, Kakashi-sensei is going to be at least 2 hours late, so he should be allowed to sleep in, Kurama is out the door, blanket still trailing from under his arm like a somewhat limp victory banner. Naruto flops back onto his pillows with a whining groan, cursing the fact that his cousin seems to be the epitome of a morning person. 20 minutes later, feeling slightly more awake and a tiny bit more alert, Naruto hauls himself up onto one of the kitchen chairs and blinks at the dishes that are deposited in front of him. What? He demands in shock. Kurama raises an amused brow in his direction. Grilled salmon, miso soup with onion and tofu, pickles, freshly made rice, and a glass of non-sour milk. Something wrong with that, Naruto-kun? It's a perfectly lovely breakfast, made even nicer by the fact that Naruto didn't have to cook it himself, but… Kurama-ni, I usually just have a cup of ramen. Really, that's delicious and very satisfying, I'm sure. The redhead cuts in, taking a seat across from Naruto with his own breakfast, but regardless of taste, that's not a complete breakfast, Naruto-kun. Ramen is fine for lunch, since it has lots of calories to replace those lost in training, and salt to make up for some of what you sweat out, but it isn't breakfast food. While you're living here, you'll eat full, balanced meals. But ramen… Naruto protests, because ramen is God and there's no way he's going to be deprived of the chance. Naruto! Kurama looks up at him and smiles, and the expression somehow manages to imply shut your mouth and eat, or the next meal served in this house will include your perfectly grilled flesh while simultaneously remaining utterly kind and innocent. Eat your breakfast. Naruto closes his mouth with a snap, ignores the shudder of horror that races down his spine. It fights for a place in his stomach beside the curl of warmth at the thought that somebody cares about his nutrition, and eats his breakfast. It's delicious, if still mildly terrifying. As they eat, Naruto takes the time to watch his cousin. Kurama looks bright and cheerful, and for the first time that Naruto's seen he's wearing the standard Konoha Jounin uniform, though his shirt is sleeveless and leaves his tattooed arms bare. In the early morning sun his hair is unnervingly close to the color of blood, but his face is peaceful, even with the pale scars that cut across the tanned skin. Naruto traces them with his eyes, trying to be discreet about it. One runs from the right side of his jaw all the way up to his hairline, and another slants down from the middle of his left cheek, across the skin of his throat, and disappears beneath his hair. A faint shimmer of violet light catches his eye as Kurama reaches for the tamari, and Naruto blinks, dropping his gaze to one of the tattoos around the man's wrist. It's glowing, if only faintly, and he can't help but stare. Ah, Kurama says, apparently noticing the direction of his gaze. He pulls his hand back and turns his arm over, studying the mark, and then looks up at Naruto with a startlingly bright smile. Have you ever seen seals before, Naruto-kun? Almost automatically, Naruto's hand goes to his stomach, pressing over the seal there, and then he freezes. What? He squeaks. Kurama just keeps smiling, as though he didn't notice the hesitation. Seals, he repeats, and lays both palms flat on the table so that Naruto can see the intricate, twisting designs that are inked into his skin. There are no two the same, though some are faintly similar, and Naruto leans forward to study them, eyes narrowed in confusion. Like, for keeping stuff in? Naruto asks, racking his brain to remember if Iruka-sensei said anything about this stuff. Kinda like sealing scrolls. Kurama nods, and his expression shifts into something fond as he runs his fingers up his arm, tracing the outlines of one of the marks. Sealing scrolls are the absolute most basic form, he acknowledges. Most shinobi can make them, since it's an incredibly simple design. Sealing mostly deals with containing and either trapping or redirecting a force, and from their people are only limited by their imagination and the size they want their seal to be. Wrinkling his nose, Naruto blurts out, but that's not cool at all. You can't do anything just keeping stuff in. Half a heartbeat too late he realizes that might have sounded insulting and winces, hoping it won't get him tossed out on his ear. But rather than taking offense, Kurama just laughs. You'd think that, at first glance, he agrees, and that's why there aren't many seal masters left outside of those who escaped the fall of Uzushiogakure. He leans forward, twisting his arm to show Naruto a set of curving designs that run from the bend of his elbow to his wrist. As an example, do you know what elemental affinities are? Iruka-sensei definitely talked about that there was even a test on it, but the main thing Naruto remembers about that day is how the majority of the girls screamed when they found his rubber spiders in their desks. He quickly shakes his head. Thankfully, Kurama still simply looks amused. Elemental affinities show what kind of jutsus a shinobi will be best at using. Here in Fire Country, most shinobi have a fire affinity, but it's not uncommon for other kinds to pop up as well. The Uchiha had a handful of lightning affinities, the Hyuga often have water affinities, and a few of the lesser shinobi clans like the Kamizuki are earth affinities. A shinobi can learn to be good with an element that isn't their affinity, but it's far more difficult, and they'll always be better at their natural element. Naruto opens his mouth to ask the obvious question, but before he can, Kurama cuts him off with a faintly raised brow, indicating the marks on his arm again. I have a wind affinity, but using seals, I can take my chakra, contain it, and run it through enough a series of elemental conversion matrices are. He breaks off with a chuckle, seeing the utterly blank look on Naruto's face. The seals contain the chakra that I feed them, he clarifies, not sounding put out about having to the way a lot of the academy teachers did, before Naruto just stopped bothering to ask. They change my chakra's elemental affinity, and when I release the chakra I can use it as though I have a completely different affinity. That's the kind of thing seals can do. Like I said, it's all up to your imagination. If you can figure out a way to add the correct seals, simply containing chakra can become your greatest weapon. Naruto stares at the pretty lines that suddenly seem infinitely more significant, open-mouthed and uncaring, because Kuramani, he breathes. You can do any jutsu. A soft snort, and then a calloused hand ruffles his hair. Of course that's what you take away from that, brat, Kurama says, though there's no annoyance in his tone, only warm humor. Yes, Naruto-kun, with enough advance warning and a moment to prepare the chakra, I can do all 5 main types of jutsus. Not indefinitely, though, and not too many times in a row, or it will burn the seals out. They are fairly delicate. Even so, that's absolutely awesome. Naruto stares up at his cousin, visions of knocking Sasuke team on his but with a burst of fire and then drenching him with a tsunami dancing through his head. Teach me, he cries, bouncing in his chair. I wanna learn that, too, Kuramani. Kurama regards him for a moment, one brow still lifted, and then shakes his head with a chuckle. We'll see, he answers, standing up and gathering both sets of empty dishes. If you want a set of seals like mine, though, you're going to have to learn all of the theory behind them and do well in the Chunin exams before I even think about letting you get them put on you in ink. He pauses, placing the dishes in the sink, and casts a considering eye over Naruto's all but vibrating form. Then he smiles again, kind and sweet, and it somehow manages to make Naruto feel warm all the way to the tips of his toes. But I'll talk to your Jounin-sensei and see if I can start teaching you the basics of sealing, at least. I think you've got enough imagination and unpredictability to be good at it. No one has ever said that they thought Naruto would be good at something. Naruto goes still in his seat, frozen by those unexpected words and the weird, happy, twisting feeling in his chest, like the kind he gets when Sakura smiles at him and Sasuke isn't a complete team and Iruka-sensei treats him to ramen all in the same day. He swallows hard, uncertain in the face of this unfamiliar feeling, and starts a little when that warm hand drops to rest in his hair again. Hey, Kurama says gently, meeting his eyes with yet another smile, and no one has ever smiled this much at Naruto, not even Hokage, who is all too often busy or exasperated or both. Hey, the redhead repeats, ruffling his hair. Come on, let's get going. You don't want to be late meeting your team. Thought of his new squadmates jazz Naruto out of his daze, and he pulls a face. But Kakashi-sensei isn't going to be there for hours. Kurama laughs, turning away to pull a tall bento box out of the fridge. But Kakashi has been an elite jounin long enough that he can get away with that kind of thing, he counters. Plebeians like you and I have to show up on time until we're important enough that our value outweighs our quirkiness. Plebeians? Naruto echoes, confused again, and geez, why can't adults just talk normally? Common folk, Kurama clarifies, picking up a sheathed sword from where it was resting in the corner. He slings it across his back and heads for the door. Come on, Naruto-kun, I'll walk you there. Might as well ask if Kakashi will let me teach you sealing right away, rather than waiting until you're bogged down with D-ranks. The promise of that is enough to get Naruto up and moving, hopping to pull his sandals on as Kurama heads out the door. He rushes after his cousin, almost colliding with the man when Kurama stops in front of the hallway's largest window. Kurama-ni? Naruto asks curiously. Kurama looks at him, and there's a spark of very familiar mischief in his eyes. Naruto's seen it in the mirror. You haven't learned tree walking or how to use the rooftop yet, Kurama says, then drops into a crouch in front of Naruto. Hop on, this way's faster. Remembering yesterday's jaunt over the roofs and the nearly weightless leap up to the Hokage's window, Naruto doesn't hesitate. With a grin, he leaps onto his cousin's back, wraps his arms and legs around him like a monkey, and clings as Kurama takes a chakra-assisted bound out the window, across the gap between buildings, and then breaks into a run. Way too much red hair hits Naruto square in the face, and someday he'll ask why his cousin has more hair than even I know, but it's worth it just for the sheer speed Kurama can move at. If this is what being a jounin is like, Naruto can't wait until he becomes one. Which training ground? Kurama asks as he bounds across the main street, not even vaguely winded. Naruto shakes his head. Kakashi-sensei said to meet on the bridge like we did for our test. I remember that bridge, I think, Kurama hums, and Naruto belatedly remembers that the man is new to Konoha. Before he can offer directions, though, Kurama changes his heading and hops from a rooftop onto the thick branch of a tree, then drops down to the quiet side street. He crouches down again. Come on, it's not too far from here, and walking will help loosen up your muscles for stretching. With a pout, because that's got to be one of the most awesome ways to travel, Naruto detaches himself and slides off, only to startle a little when Kurama wraps an arm around his shoulders and tugs him into a quick half-hug as he stands. The jounin doesn't say anything, acts like it's perfectly natural as he steps away, but Naruto is floored. Maybe other kids get regular hugs, but apart from a few courtesy of Iruka, and the occasional fond pat from Hokage and, of course, Sakura's love taps, nobody touches him. It's not even so much that people avoid it as he just doesn't have anyone to give him frequent hugs. But now he does. Come on, Naruto-kun, Kurama calls, casting a smile back over his shoulder, and Naruto's 12 years old and a genin, he should have outgrown this kind of urge by now, but nevertheless he runs to catch up and carefully, cautiously slips his hand into Kurama's free one. Kurama glances down and chuckles, curls his fingers around Naruto's in turn, and acts like that's completely natural as well. It's weird in a way that's so overwhelmingly good Naruto can hardly breathe because of it. He's allowed to do this. I hope you like onigiri and vegetable buns, Kurama says casually, lifting the bento box he's carrying. I thought it might be nice for you to have some food for when Kakashi gives you a break. There's enough to share, too. He offers Naruto a secretive, conspiratorial smile. I've always found that there's no better way to build teamwork than sharing a meal with your starving teammates. Naruto beams back, thinking of how Sakura will react to being offered the miracle of his cousin's really, really good cooking. Then he remembers her excuse the last few times he asked her out for ramen and wilts. But Sakura-chan is on a diet. She won't eat any. I think you're underestimating the effects of the hell training Kakashi is going to put you through, Kurama says thoughtfully, and that devious glint in his eyes is definitely not comforting at all. Naruto is more than able to recognize a kindred pranking spirit, and the mere fact that Kurama managed to dodge all of his traps before many of which other jounin have fallen to is a clue that despite his bright and innocent smile, Kurama is just as much of a trickster as Naruto himself. It's probably genetic, and the idea of having genetics in common with someone else is a thrill in and of itself. Even if she doesn't eat any, offer some to your other teammate, Kurama suggests. Sakura isn't the only one on your squad, after all. But Sasuke is a BSTD. Naruto protests, offended by the very thought. He's a complete and total. A warm laugh cuts him off. Maybe, Kurama allows, but I think you're more than capable of holding your own, Naruto, so you don't need to prove anything. He tilts his head, considering, and then offers Naruto a tricky grin. How would you like to freak him out completely? Always up for anything prank-related, especially when Sasuke team is on the receiving end, Naruto cries, definitely, believe it. Try this, then, whenever he insults you, compliment him. Offer to share your food and smile at him. Don't let him beat you, but show him just what you can do and then don't boast about it. I think that will blow his mind if you can keep it up for a few days. Naruto chews that over for a minute. As much as he'd like to immediately shoot down any idea that calls for acting nice towards the BSTRD, the concept has promise. Sasuke teams become so used to Naruto rightfully proclaiming his awesomeness and how he's going to beat the BSTRD that switching it up will throw him off track completely. I'll do it, he declares firmly. Just wait and see, Sasuke team's not gonna know. What hit him? I bet he won't, Kurama demurs, an echo of that fox grin still hovering around the corners of his mouth. Naruto debates asking who it's directed at, but quickly decides that he'd really rather not know. Sakura perches on the railing of the bridge, the first to arrive. She's nervous, can't stop twisting her fingers in the hem of her dress even as the thrill of passing Kakashi-sensei's test and actually becoming a genin makes her feel bubbly and about 20 pounds too light. She's always been smart, has stayed the top kunoichi in her year since almost the very beginning, even coming from a civilian family and being year mates with the heirs to the biggest clans, but it's only just now really sinking in. She's a genin, an actual shinobi instead of an academy hopeful, and the next few years are going to change everything. As far as teams go, maybe she didn't land on the best one judging by past generations. That's probably the Ino Shikacho team for sheer solid dependability and all-around effectiveness, but it could be a lot worse. Sasuke's a genius, and Naruto at least has those insane amounts of shadow clones going for him. And Hatake Kakashi is supposed to be one of the best jounin in the village, even if he's never passed a team before. Then, of course, is the fact that Hatake Kakashi has never passed a team before, but they passed. They managed it, as weird and mismatched a trio as they are. That's got to count for something, certainly. The sound of voices draws her out of her thoughts, and she looks up, hoping but not expecting that it will be Sasuke. Half a moment later she realizes the problem with that, because Sasuke doesn't exactly talk to people, and deflates just as the speakers round the bend of the road. Then she takes a second look at them and blinks in surprise. The very first thing to catch her attention is red. Deep, brilliant red hair, like the garnets her mother likes to wear on special occasions, darker than rubies but no less vivid. At first she thinks the approaching adult is a woman, but that frame is too broad to be feminine, built on different lines. It's a man with long hair, wearing a shinobi uniform, a jounin vest, and a Konoha Hitaiate in the same style as hers. And next to him, clinging to his hand and chattering away, is a familiar blonde. The jounin doesn't seem to mind, though, because he's smiling gently, and as they approach she can see that his blue eyes are warm. He's not even ignoring Naruto, he's responding and paying attention. Not even Iruka-sensei, who treats Naruto like a little brother, catches every single word the boy says. Sakura-chan! Naruto cries, finally noticing her, and he detaches himself from the man to bound over to her. Sakura-chan, come meet Kuramani. He's a jounin and he used to be a bounty hunter and he's really strong. Of course strength would be the first thing Naruto focused on. Still, Sakura knows enough to identify the marks on the jounin's arms as seals, and he's carrying a katana slung across his back with an ease that says it's a familiar weight. A little nervously, she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear and smiles up at the stranger. Hello, I'm Haruno Sakura. I hope Naruto wasn't bothering you. The man's eyes crinkle as he turns that warm smile on her. Not at all, Sakura-chan. I'm Uzumaki Kurama. It's nice to finally meet you, Naruto told me quite a bit about you. Sakura blinks, trying to remember if she's ever heard of or met anyone else with the name Uzumaki, but she hasn't. In fact, up until now, she was dead certain that Naruto was an orphan. But between the way Naruto is clinging to the man, the honorific Naruto used, and the name. Kuramani is my cousin, Naruto adds, his grin wide enough to split his face. But he didn't know about me and I didn't know about him, so he never came to get me before. But we're living together now. He's got an apartment in the shinobi area with a balcony and there are seals everywhere, and Kuramani says he's going to teach me how to make them too. Breathe, Naruto-kun, Kurama says with a tolerant, amused smile. He ruffles Naruto's hair and then drops down to sit cross-legged on the ground, setting the bento he's carrying off to one side and resting his hands on his knees. A quick check of the sun's position has his stretching languidly and leaning back against the rail, then peering up at Sakura with humor in his eyes. I assume your sensei won't be here for a while. Do you mind if I wait with you too? Even as Naruto voices his enthusiastic support of the idea, Sakura shakes her head, trying not to stare at the jounin. He's handsome, though definitely not as handsome as Sasuke, and he's scarred. She remembers Naruto blurting something about bounty hunting, and has to fight a shiver. The thought of missing Nin scares her, and she hopes that if when she has to face her first rogue ninja, it's a long while into her future. I've heard Naruto-kun's story already, Kurama says, making her look at him squarely. His eyes are very blue, darker than Naruto's but just as sincere and friendly. He favors her with a slightly crooked smile and asks, "Why did you choose to be a ninja, Sakura-chan?" "Because Sasuke-kun," she starts automatically, and then stops, blinking. That's not right. That's not right at all. Maybe Sasuke is a factor now, but she didn't actually meet him until after she started the academy. She just hasn't thought back to the real reason in a very long time. So long, but she can still remember it. She remembers it with perfect clarity the second she pauses to think about it, and that's a little surprising. For so long her head's been filled with nothing but Sasuke, and while as his future wife and soul mate there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, she's somehow deeply glad that she still hasn't forgotten her original reason. Because there was a kunoichi who lived next to us when I was little, she says slowly, and it takes no effort at all to remember the woman, tall and strong and always standing very straight. She used to babysit me, sometimes, when both of my parents were busy and she didn't have missions. But she died protecting a family traveling across the border. The man who told me said that she stepped in front of a sword meant for a girl my age, and that it was only because of Kasumi-san fighting until she bled out that the whole family managed to get away safely. Sakura hasn't thought about Kasumi-san in years, because really, it's a little terrifying to imagine such a situation. But at the same time, the thought of the brave, strong woman Sakura knew giving absolutely everything she had to save the lives of those depending on her, it makes Sakura's heart feel hot and heavy at the same time, makes her breath catch in her chest and something fierce burn in her throat, because she wants to be the kind of person who can do that. She wants to be that brave and strong and selfless, and up until this moment she'd forgotten that. Sasuke is still amazing and cool and so handsome and brilliant, but is not why Sakura wants to be a ninja, a kunoichi. Kasumi-san is. The ability to be so completely devoted and fearless is. When she raises her head, feeling oddly shaky and unbalanced, Kurama is still watching her, blue eyes somewhere between proud and warm and sad, all at once. That's a good reason, he says. Sakura smiles at him, helpless to do anything else, and nods firmly. I think so too, she answers, and somehow, it's no surprise at all that her voice is entirely steady. Kurama never sleeps much anymore, can't break the long-ingrained habit of constant vigilance and frequent movement. 3 hours is all he needs, after Kurama's sacrifice, and in a tight spot he can make do with even less. It's perfect for a war, especially one fought with guerrilla tactics behind enemy lines, and was one of the few advantages Kurama could claim over Madara. But here, in peacetime, in a village that understands nothing of the dangers yet to come, the night seemed to stretch on into eternity. Too many hours spent still and restless, aching at the confinement regardless of his gratitude for it during the day, and for the first time Kurama wishes he could sleep the way Naruto is doing across the hall. Talking with Obito only takes so long, after all, and the Uchiha tends to get cranky if Kurama continually interrupts his thinking time. So Kurama leaves Obito to his scheming, lies awake in his bed with oppressive silence all around him, and lets his thoughts drift. As they always, inevitably do, they turn towards his past, this world's future, and Kurama closes his eyes on the sight of his bedroom ceiling. Not quite a dream, not exactly a memory, but there are images behind his eyes, that night when everything changed so very much, when hope and despair came hand in hand. He smells fire, feels cold stone beneath his bare back, the bite of heavy manacles around wrists and ankles. There are seals carved into the metal, familiar and hated, and not a single speck of chakra can escape beyond his skin. He fights, tearing flesh, but can't bring himself to care, because Madara is in the next room and the Kyuubi is terrifyingly quiet in his head, and Naruto has never been one to lose hope until the very last possible moment, if even then, but his friends are either dead or fighting on distant fronts, and there's no way anyone can save him. Not in time. Not even close. Kurama stirs inside of him, crimson fur like fresh blood as he raises his head to regard the blonde boy panting for breath before his cage. Ruby eyes are slitted, dangerous, but Naruto stopped fearing Kurama years ago. Brat, the demon fox says softly. Madara's going to rip the chakra out of us, and this time he'll take it from both of us and even you won't be able to survive. Naruto bares his teeth, even as he blinks blood out of his eyes and tries to keep from swaying. No! I won't let him. You can't stop him. Kurama rises to his feet, vast and beautiful in a treacherous, dangerous way. This is one battle you're not going to be able to win, no matter how strong your willpower or your faith. Well, I'm not about to give up, Naruto snarls in return. Madara's been trying to get your chakra since the very first, and if we surrender and give it to him then he'll use it too. Not you, brat, and not we. Me. I'm going to have to be the one to stop him this time. Kurama looks down at him for a long moment, and then huffs out a fire-hot sigh. You're a troublesome little mortal, you know that? Hating all of my containers was so much easier. A shiver of foreboding slips down Naruto's spine like a drop of ice water, and he pulls himself up straight, eyes narrowing sharply. Kurama, whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. This isn't the time for stupid sacrifices. If not now, when? Kurama asks frankly. Of those who took a stand, how many are left? What remains of Konoha beyond a handful of desperate shinobi and a few crumbling ruins? Who is there to come to our rescue and actually succeed? Only your Ucha would have even a slim chance of pulling it off, and is clear across fire country and a good portion of wind country as well. Face it, we're on our own, and you've got no chance of doing anything. But Nine Tails lash angrily, and Kurama crouches down, one huge eye fixed warningly on his Jinchuriki. No, he growls. There's only one chance for you. My time's up either way, and I'd rather it be in the name of saving you than becoming Madara's pawn once again. Naruto growls, mimicking his tenant with startling accuracy. No, he cries again. No, you BS. I've already lost too many friends to this a-hole. I won't lose another. There's a long moment of silence, and when Kurama speaks again, his voice has softened, gentled with something perilously close to sympathy. You're the first to ever treat me like a friend, Naruto, and that's the reason I'm willing to do this. Please, just once more, let me help you. Let me give you a gift, in return for everything you've given me these past few years. You stupid fox. That's not how friendship works. The Kyuubi's growl is 1,000 times more impressive than anything that could ever come from a human's throat. You think I don't know that, brat? Just for once in your life, stop arguing. Accept this. I don't offer it lightly, but it's a burden that you of all people will be more than able to bear. And hurry up. We haven't got much time before Madara's done preparing for his diamond ritual. With a wordless cry of grief and rage, Naruto rakes his fingers through his blonde hair, FSNG his hands in the shoulder-length strands and wrenching at them with impotent fury. Glowing red eyes keep watching him, fixed and unwavering but not unsympathetic. If not for me, Kurama says softly, with all the ruthless precision of the very best assassin, then accept it for him. Your Ucha. Isn't it cruel to leave him like this? Naruto closes his eyes, helpless and loathing the weakness in his heart, the one that's driving him to say yes just for Sasuke's sake, and DMN the consequences. But beyond that, he knows Kurama is right. Knows this is the only way, when there's no hope of freeing himself and no chance of rescue when no one even knows he's gone. Madara has him, has Kurama, and that's the final step towards his victory. If Madara wins this, wins the Kyuubi, everything will have been for nothing. All of the death, all of the destruction, it will become meaningless. Naruto can't let that happen, no matter the cost. Fine, he whispers, and hates himself for it. Fine. Do it. Atom by atom, bit by tiny bit, the world starts to fade away into white brilliance. Kurama keeps his eyes on Naruto, even as his own form starts to vanish like shattered stars, like fireflies in the moonlight. You'll do fine, brat, Kurama say gruffly, and he's more than half gone now, but regardless of what he's enduring he doesn't so much as twitch. Even if you died this moment and could let my body disperse, I still think I like this option. You're giving me everything, Naruto breathes, and he wants to look away from it, this beautiful, gradual death, but he won't let himself. He keeps looking, and because of that, he can see the last, faint foxgrin Kurama wears as the fade reaches his head. Isn't that what friends do? Kurama asks, warm and fond and laughing, and then even the echo is gone. There's nothing left but light and white, a brilliant expanse of absolutely nothing. Naruto drags his hands through his hair, trying not to shake, and red clings to his fingers like stray threads of crimson silk, the same garnet as Kurama's fur. He closes his eyes, gritting his teeth even as a rush of searing warmth burns through him, and then opens them. The roof of the cavern Madara's been using looms above him, and Kurama calls up his roiling, raging chakra, no longer fully human, and braces himself. The manacles shatter and he runs, red hair whipping behind him, his steps too fast for any human, even the son of the yellow flash. He runs and runs and runs, fast and faster still, but he can't outrun the change or the hollow, aching emptiness inside of him. Kurama is gone, and only Naruto is left. Sakura is amazing, Kurama thinks wryly, watching the girl who will grow up to be the strongest medic nin in the elemental countries, his surrogate sister and unflinching, unyielding rock in hard times. She's still just a little girl, but Kurama can already see a shadow of the woman she'll become in her sharp eyes, the firm set of her mouth. She had told him once, back in his time, about the neighbor who made her want to be a shinobi. At the time she had laughed, brushing it off as something long forgotten, but even then, so many years distant from the incident, it had clearly affected her. Kurama had decided, spur of the moment and entirely on a whim, to see if he could remind her. It's working. It has worked, because the two genin have been bombarding him with ninjutsu questions for the past 30 minutes and Sakura has only mentioned Sasuke twice. And really, she's incredible, so very clever that it's almost terrifying, and ridiculously in control of herself. Already she's shifting her mindset, consciously choosing to focus on shinobi matters instead of daydreaming about her crush, and there's a fire in her eyes that was entirely absent when they arrived. Kurama knows that small changes can make the greatest difference in the end, has used such tactics to his own advantage here in a time not his own, but this is perhaps the greatest example of all. 9 words, one of the most basic questions, and she's already rearranging her priorities. Oh, it won't be quite so simple. Doubtless Sasuke's reappearance will bring about a relapse, but Kurama suspects that it won't be all that difficult, either. And she's changing herself, which is perhaps the most important part of all. It's not the influence of an outside force, simply a recalled memory. Sasuke will doubtless be a fair bit harder, though Kurama has hope for him as well. Almost as he thinks it, achingly familiar chakra appears within the range of his senses, and he falters, stumbling over a word. Naruto doesn't seem to notice, though Sakura gives him a faintly odd glance, and Kurama can't quite bring himself to pay attention to either of them as he lifts his head. The small, ridiculously childlike figure is approaching at a steady pace, hands in his pockets and a calculated indifference in his eyes. He doesn't look at either of his teammates, even as Sakura calls out a cheery and near-worshipful greeting, but immediately fixes his attention on Kurama, the most powerful of the three. Dark eyes narrow sharply, suspicious and already trying to calculate what the reason for the Jounin's presence is. It is startlingly easy for Kurama to look at him, to breathe with. Sasuke within his sight. This isn't the Sasuke he left behind, beautiful in the way of the full moon in a cloudless sky, as graceful and deadly as the lightning he wielded so casually. This Sasuke is a waxing moon in the midst of a storm, lightning on a mountaintop seen from the far end of a valley. They're the same person, but only in the way that a rough sketch is the same as a finished masterpiece. This Sasuke has a very many roads to travel before he can become anything like the man Kurama left behind. Sasuke comes to a halt before Kurama, looking down on him with dark eyes and a derisive slant to his mouth. "Kakashi pawned us off on you already," he huffs as he crosses his arms over his chest. "Hey!" Naruto protests as he bolts to his feet, and then freezes. A beat and then he spins to face Kurama, eyes bright with enthusiasm and mouth open in preparation for a shout. "No, Naruto-kun," Kurama says swiftly, cutting him off before he can even start. "Kakashi-san is your Jounin-sensei." The blonde wilts a little, looking disappointed. "But Kurama-ni." Rolling his eyes, Kurama reaches out to ruffle the spiky hair. "Oh, enough, I've already said I'll teach you sealing, and we'll see what we can't drill into your skull regarding Uzumaki clan Kenjutsu. Be content with that, brat." Sasuke makes a faint sound, not quite surprise but something that wishes it could be. "Clan?" he repeats sharply. Kurama gives him a smile, even as he pushes to his feet and dusts off his black pants. "Yes," he affirms. The Uzumaki were one of the founding families of Uzushiogakure, and a main part of its politics and military right up until its destruction in the Second Shinobi War. He inclines his head, dropping a carelessly affectionate hand on Naruto's head. "I'm Uzumaki Kurama. It's nice to meet you." "Acha Sasuke," the brunette grunts, already turning away. But Kurama knows this boy, knew him as a brat and a hero and everything in between. He knows how to get his attention. "Acha? Ah, I've met your brother before." Sasuke goes entirely stiff, every muscle strung taut. He turns, fury in his eyes and rage twisting his features, and Kurama reaches out and easily catches the kunai that comes flying at his throat. A second later he catches Sasuke, too, grabbing the boy's arm and whirling him around to half-pin him against the railing of the bridge. "That," he says dryly, "was not polite." The Ucha snarls, struggling against the grip like an eel. "You saw that murderous yesterday?" Kurama flicks his eyes up to see that Naruto and Sakura are both watching them, but they're several steps away. He leans down, close to Sasuke's ear, and murmurs, "Aren't you a ninja, Ucha? Hasn't anyone ever told you to look underneath the underneath? Or do you really think that the same brother who gave you piggyback rides when you were too tired to walk suddenly snapped and killed everyone for no reason?" Sasuke goes very, very still against him, not even breathing, and Kurama waits. One more moment to be sure it's safe before he releases the boy and steps back. Still frozen, Sasuke stays where he is, but grits out, "That's not something to joke about." "No," Kurama agrees soberly, "it's not. But it's certainly something to think about." The boy says nothing, but all things considered, maybe that's the best course for now. Anything else Kurama has to say can wait for somewhere less public. Kakashi arrives, as per his cunning plan, 2 hours and 17 minutes late for the team meeting, and lurks in one of the surrounding trees to get a feel for the lay of the land. Also to check that none of his cute little genin are clutching deadly weapons, but that's beside the point. What he sees is surprising. Naruto is bouncing, as should probably be expected, but it's not with irritation. He's laughing, bright and cheerful and very much like Minato, and is halfway draped over Konoha's newest jounin. Uzumaki Kurama smiles at his little cousin from his seat on the ground, clearly amused, and then tilts his head back to look up at Sakura, who's perched on the railing of the bridge with feet resting on Kurama's shoulder. She's talking enthusiastically, green eyes bright and hands darting as she tries to make a point. She doesn't once turn and look at the dark boy brooding on the other side of the bridge, which is absolutely staggering. Kakashi had thought her a fangirl worse than Rin ever managed to be, one half step back from hopeless, and this is almost enough to give him hope. Sasuke, too, is ever so slightly different than he has been the last few days. He's still a stick-straight figure, dark and surly, but the lines around his eyes and the creases in his forehead speak of shock and thoughtfulness, respectively. Even when Naruto bounces too close, the Ucha says nothing, trapped in thoughts that don't seem to be dark, merely deep. And in the midst of it all, Kurama is laughing and smiling and talking to both Sakura and Naruto, not quite a lecture and certainly not preaching, but discussing. It's a hard thing for many Jounin instructors to do, remembering that their genin aren't just little mindless students but actual people, shinobi people, at that. But the redhead seems to have found the necessary balance. Ah! Sakura cries suddenly, almost making Kakashi fall out of the tree in surprise. Kurama-san, how can you pick just one thing to specialize in? They're all so interesting. That's definitely not the boy-crazy fangirl of yesterday talking, and Kakashi vaguely wonders who's impersonating his kunoichi in training, and why they didn't bother doing their homework on her beforehand. Kurama simply chuckles. You don't just have to settle on one thing, he reminds her, even as Naruto chimes in with, yeah. I'm gonna master everything just like Hokage did. Scuffing a hand through his cousin's hair, Kurama rolls his eyes fondly and adds, one of the best examples to read up on might be Tsunadeheim of the Sannin. Sakura-chan. She's the most accomplished medicnin in the world, but she's also a devastating frontline fighter because she's ridiculously strong. She can knock down trees with a flick of her finger. I think she'd make a good role model for you. Kakashi might be mistaken, but he's fairly certain there are stars in Sakura's eyes. A frontline medic? That's amazing. Medicnin are usually the weakest in a squad because they have so little chakra and everyone ends up protecting them, but Tsunadeheim must be so powerful. That she is, Kurama agrees cheerfully, and grunts as Naruto throws himself over his shoulders. He laughs again, grabbing the blonde before he can wiggle free. And you, Naruto-kun, are going to be a chakra tank, I have no doubt. We Uzumaki have ridiculous stamina, too, so if you can master a bunch of ninjutsu you'll be able to keep using them long after someone else would have dropped into a coma from chakra depletion. Yeah. Naruto cheers. I'm gonna learn all of your seals and then master every single jutsu ever, Kuramani. Off, brat, you're heavy. Kurama chides with mock gruffness, flailing a little comically with his elbow in what is a clearly half-hearted attempt to push him off. It fails completely. Then he raises his head to regard the brunette across the bridge, and smiles. And I'm sure Sasuke-kun is a taijutsu genius already, graduating top of your class. If you add kenjutsu to that, you'll be devastating, I'm sure. Almost despite himself, Sasuke looks up, a faint spark of interest in his gaze. Kenjutsu? He asks, eyes narrowing. With a wiggle that should be entirely unbecoming of a jounin but just manages to look bendy, Kurama detaches himself from Naruto and reaches over his shoulder, grasping the blue-wrapped hilt of his katana and drawing it smoothly. He holds it for a moment, looking down at the shimmering silver of the blade with something like regretful fondness in his eyes, and then flips it around and offers it hilt first to the genin. Here. See how it feels in your hand. Sasuke hesitates, but clearly the idea of kenjutsu is appealing, because after only a second he nods and takes a step forward, grasping the hilt and drawing it back carefully. The blade is too heavy for him as he is right now, dipping his arm and making his shoulders tense, but his eyes are wide with something that Kakashi is almost willing to call wonder as he raises the blade in front of him. It's a chakra-conducting blade, Kurama says, watching Sasuke with something unreadable in his eyes. For lightning and wind, specifically, though I've also used it for water and fire in a pinch. There are seals in the metal itself to neutralize enemy attacks, or at least decrease their potency. I added them myself during the forging. Forget almost. That's definitely wonder in the last Ucha's eyes as he shifts into an experimental taijutsu stance, attempting a simple slash. It's awkward, but Kurama doesn't laugh, simply rises to his feet. And approaches him, carefully touching his shoulder and then, when he's not rejected, repositioning Sasuke's stance. A moment later, he steps away with a nod. There. Try it again. Astonishingly, Sasuke does as is told, and it's much, much better this time. Kakashi can see the boy's eyes light up, and that too is astonishing, when Kakashi had thought this boy was an avenger and nothing else. Kurama sounds thoughtful. I know that the Ucha had their own kenjutsu styles, Sasuke-kun, but with your age and current reach, I think the Uzumaki style would benefit you too. Since I'm going to be teaching Naruto-kun, would you like to learn as well? Sasuke goes stiff, visibly torn between the pride that wants nothing to do with anything related to his dead last teammate and the desire to learn something new and deadly. He says nothing, but the indecision is clear on his face. Kurama simply chuckles, reaching out and resting a hand on top of his head. From anyone else it would be a condescending, patronizing gesture, but the redhead somehow manages to turn it into something fond and gentle and kind. "Take your time deciding," he says simply. "I'm not planning on going anywhere, and if you want to find another instructor, or ask Kakashi-san, that's fine too. I just think you'd be good at it, and a shinobi should always take advantage of a skill that can protect their precious people." Kakashi wonders, hearing the deeply buried regret and grief in the man's voice, just how many of those people Kurama has lost. Too many, probably likely all of them, given his previous lifestyle. But still, Kurama is smiling cheerfully, and Naruto is demanding jutsus, and Sakura is trying to get Kurama to tell her more about Tsunade, and Sasuke is trying another careful swing. Somehow, in some way, Uzumaki Kurama has recovered from the same blow that all but destroyed Kakashi, and seeing that, something small and warm settles in Kakashi's chest and takes root. If Kurama can still smile like that after losing absolutely everything, there's hope for Kakashi as well. Allowing himself a faint, true smile, Kakashi drops down from his perch, tucks his hands into his pockets, and saunters over to join his team. He doesn't bother noticing that he includes Kurama in that number as well, at least for the moment, it's entirely unimportant. It's a bit of a surprise to wander into the Jounin standby station and see the now familiar wealth of crimson hair. Genma pauses 3 steps into the room and blinks, but Kurama remains on the comfortable couch, papers scattered around him like the victims of a localized hurricane. Huffing out a soft laugh because if asked, Genma would have said that Kurama was the politely amiable but distant type, never one to socialize, and clearly would have been wrong that Takujo changes direction and settles onto the couch across from the redhead. "Having fun?" he asks dryly, watching Kurama mutter and chew on the end of his pen. Kurama flinches, so slightly that most people would miss it, and then raises his head. He blinks at Genma for a moment, blue eyes almost dazed, before focus rushes back into them like a wave and they narrow sharply. "Genma-san," he says sharply, bolting to his feet. "Come with me." "What?" Genma starts, but before he can even get to the second syllable, Kurama has grabbed his wrist, dragged him to his feet, and triggered a shunshin. The world blurs with smoke and color, and half a second later they are touching down in a deserted training ground, Genma's head spinning slightly from the speed of the transportation. It's only his long-honed instincts that let him dodge the lightning-swift handstrike that would have caved in his nose if it connected, and with a huff Genma leaps back, putting distance between himself and the redhead. "Kurama-kun, what the hell?" Settled into an unfamiliar taijutsu stance, Kurama blinks at him innocently. "I need your help with my training," he says, as though it should be obvious why he's grabbing random Takujo and then trying to rearrange their faces. "We both have a shift at the mission assignment desk this afternoon, so you don't have missions and can spar with me, right?" He smiles, bright and deceptively sweet. "You're one of the fastest and most agile shinobi in Konoha. Please?" That's blatant flattery. Apparently Kurama is very enthusiastic about this training. Genma hesitates, eyeing the Jounin suspiciously, and then sighs and shoves his hair back from his face. "Right," he says resignedly. "What are we doing exactly?" The grin he gets in return is blinding. "Don't worry, you don't need to do anything specific. It'll all be on my end. Taijutsu, ninjutsu, kenjutsu, senbon, use whatever you like. Just try not to let me hit you anywhere." Kurama takes a half step back before shifting stances, his expression turning distant and a little vague, as though he's focusing on something complicated. Genma considers him for half a second, then mentally shrugs and takes his own stance. He's always up for a good, vigorous spar, one of the hazards of spending his formative years in close proximity to Guy, and he's seen Kurama in action. The man's good, so this will at least be interesting. There are far worse ways to pass a morning. He doesn't wait for a signal, they are clearly both ready, but launches himself across the gap between them. Putting his speed to use, he whirls and drops, sweeping out a long leg to knock Kurama off his feet. Without so much as a heartbeat of hesitation, Kurama leaps into the air, twisting nimbly to land on his feet behind the Takujo and striking out with a sword hand. Genma easily knocks it to the side, dipping away from the follow-up and then trying a high kick. Kurama sways out of the way, letting Genma's sandal just miss his chin, and then darts away from a sternum blow. "You really are fast," he says, apparently pleased as he drops into another stance Genma has never seen before. "That's perfect." "Same to you," Genma offers with a grin, because it's rare that anyone but Kakashi can match him in a spar, speed-wise. This is looking to be even better than he'd thought. Kurama leaps forward and launches into a blindingly quick series of punches and kicks. Genma matches him, blocking them easily enough. The redhead's attention still seems divided, like he's concentrating on more than just their match, and Genma lands 2 hard hits on his ribs and 1 on his thigh before Kurama breaks away. Pushing his advantage, Genma follows, using one of the combinations that always manages to knock Reidu on his butt. But Kurama is faster than Reidu, more used to relying on leaps and twists in his normal style, and he whirls away, vaulting right over Genma's head. Genma turns just in time to catch his arm and stop a blow to the throat, but a quick kick makes him disengage and leap back. Kurama shadows him, right up in his face and too fast to stop, and it's been so long since Genma could go all out against another Konoha nin Anbu, maybe was the last time. His grinning, heart-bounding as they whirl apart and crash together, a blur of strikes and blocks and counterattacks, nimble footwork and agile leaps. Kurama's smiling, too, hair a brilliant dancing banner in the sun, eyes bright with enthusiasm as he ducks and weaves and strikes like a snake. Genma matches him, because he can and it's wonderful, slips like a stray bit of breeze around hits that have the potential to break bones and then slides into a vicious series of blows as smoothly as water. Their pace is too fast to even think about using ninjutsu, let alone going for a sword or his senbon, but that's just fine with Genma. And then violet light flickers and flares around Kurama's left hand, a startling break in their rhythm, and before Genma can recover and block that chakra-covered palm slaps against the bare skin of his forearm. Instantly, the world blurs and then explodes into brilliant, blinding focus. The surge of sudden awareness forces Genma right to his knees as his brain tries to process the fact that his hearing, sight, sense of touch, and chakra awareness have all abruptly tripled. The rush of blood through his own veins is deafening, and the cool, gentle breeze feels like a hurricane whipping across his skin. There's so much chakra, so many sounds, and closing his eyes isn't blocking out nearly enough to be of use. He manages, and even that is deafening. "Easy," someone murmurs, just above a whisper but nevertheless sounding like a DM-end bellow. "Just breathe through it." "Sorry, I forgot what it feels like if you're not used to it." Genma's mind is already adjusting, used to combat and the need to recover from anything as quickly as possible, and he follows Kurama's suggestion, focusing on his breathing until he can manage to open his eyes without crying out from sheer sensory overload. He's still in the middle of the training ground, on his knees with his arms up as though to defend from a blow, and Kurama is crouched next to him, blue eyes full of worry. On Genma's arm, glittering violet against his skin, is a complicated seal made entirely of purple light. That, he huffs after another endless moment, was cheating, Kurama-kun. Kurama has the decency to look abashed. "I'm sorry," he repeats. "I was going for a seal with a low impact, but I forgot how that one feels if you haven't experienced it before." He reaches out and lays a hand over the seal, then closes his eyes. A moment later, Genma feels it shatter like glass, chakra fading away as his senses drop back to glorious normal. Kurama rocks back to sit on his heels, expression repentant. "Sorry," he says a third time. With a sigh, Genma settles himself in the grass, crossing his legs as the last bits of discomfort dwindle to nothingness. "Don't worry about it," he counters lightly. "I take it that was the point of the spar?" Kurama nods. "Yes. I'm teaching myself how to transfer seals during combat, like the Yondaime could do with his flying thunder god seal. But when I'm focused on fighting, it takes a while to build up the correct amount of chakra and be able to visualize the transfer. Hopefully, with enough practice, I'll be able to cut down on the time significantly. Use a different seal and I'm happy to help," Genma offers with wry amusement. "What was that, anyway?" The redhead gives him a sheepish smile. That was a sensory enhancement seal I designed myself, for fighting in the complete dark. It amplifies everything threefold, so it's useful when you're otherwise outmatched, but using it takes some getting used to. I'll say. If my brain leaks out my ears, you're going to be the one to cover my shifts at the mission's desk. And explain what happened to Radu. Kurama laughs, which is what Genma had been aiming for. All right, he agrees easily, rising to his feet and offering Genma a hand. He smiles and adds, "It's been a while since I sparred like that." "It was wonderful, thank you." Genma lets the younger man pull him to his feet, then takes a step back and stretches. His muscles feel pleasantly sore and well-worked, but it doesn't seem like he overtaxed himself. "My pleasure," he answers, and then gives the redhead a crooked grin. "You should come spar with me and Guy sometime. We're at training ground 13 every morning, as long as neither of us has a mission. Guy'd get a kick out of your style, since it's different from anything around here." "It's one of Yuzushio's," Kurama explains with a faintly sad smile and a slight shrug. "There are still some scrolls on it floating around. I'll see if I can't dig one up for him." "He'd like that, taijutsu nutball that he is," Genma says fondly, because while being moved onto a team with both Guy and Ibisu was in some ways a mostly well-adjusted kid's worst nightmare, it turned out pretty well. He and Guy made Chunan together, even landed on the same squad most of the time, and Genma's become entirely immune to the man's weirdness after so many years. At this point, Konoha just wouldn't be Konoha without its beautiful green beast. Kurama smiles at him, reading the expression and the sentiment behind it with ease. "Thank you, Gana," he murmurs, and the lines of his face are soft, strangely beautiful even with the wide, stark scars. But then, Genma's always thought Radu one of the most handsome shinobi in Konoha, so it's possible his taste is a bit skewed. "I appreciate you humoring me." "Nah," Genma says easily, slinging an arm around the man's shoulders and turning them back towards the village. His stomach is telling him that it's well past time for lunch, and Genma's never been one to deny himself. "I'm always up for a spar, and I'm more than happy to help with your training. Just let me know for the next time, yeah?" "Sure," Kurama agrees, letting himself be steered. "Our shift at the desk starts in an hour and a half, right? Let's get lunch, my treat. Ramen all right with you?" "Of course." Genma laughs, and Kurama laughs with him, and even if civilians give them weird looks, dusty and sweaty and giggling in the middle of the street, that's fine. He stopped caring about that kind of thing years ago, and from the expression of easy joy on Kurama's face, he doesn't give a DMN either. Deadly shinobi still coming off a physical exertion high are allowed to giggle if they want to. And if that's not a rule, it should be, because right now the entire world looks ridiculously bright. Sasuke watches Naruto's red-haired cousin dance through his katas, katana flashing like a straight, silver bolt of lightning as he twists and weaves. His feet are unwaveringly steady, his body entirely controlled, and his eyes are closed. Sasuke isn't arrogant enough to think that he hasn't been noticed, but is being ignored. That's not usual, and Sasuke is torn between being grateful that this man isn't a pandering, sympathetic fool like the rest of the village and a surge of impatient irritation. 3 days he's been turning the man's words over and over in his mind, trying to pick out the meaning, trying to see underneath the underneath even when for the past 5 years he's tried never to think too hard about his brother's actions that night. But now he can't help but think of them, can't do anything else at all, and it's because of this red-haired man with his cunning words. Or do you really think that the same brother who gave you piggyback rides when you were too tired to walk suddenly snapped and killed everyone for no reason? There is no possible way that what happened that night could be anything else. What other reason would there be for Itachi's words? What other reason for hurling Sasuke headlong into that tortuous vision? For telling him he was too weak? But at the same time, Sasuke cannot help but wonder, cannot help but obsess over the thought that there might have been something else behind it. Itachi loved the village, loved it even more than his family, so why do something that would have him declared a missing nin? Why leave? Sasuke isn't sure that Naruto's cousin will have the answers, doubts it strongly, but he has to at least ask, because what if he does? The katana hisses, steel over silk as it slides away, and Sasuke glances up to see the man walking towards him, silent and graceful. He's shed his shirt and jounin vest, and Sasuke can see that the tattooed seals on his arms continue over his shoulders and down the line of his spine, dark and stark against skin tanned to a deep gold. His expression, when he looks at Sasuke, is open and warm but not expectant, kind without being cloying. "You're either here for a kenjutsu lesson or some answers," the redhead says almost casually, leaning his katana up against a tree and picking up a bottle of water. He swallows a few mouthfuls, then dumps the remainder over his head with a sigh of relief. His hair, pulled up into a high tail, whips back and forth as he shakes water from his eyes and adds, "Somehow, I think you want the answers, no matter how much fun kenjutsu is." Sasuke hasn't done any training for fun since the night Itachi murdered his clan. Silently, he crosses his arms over his chest and fixes the man with his most expectant glare. Naruto's cousin simply smiles at him, light and free, and drops to the ground, starting his cooldown stretches. "I've met several Uchiha," he says willingly enough. "Your brother was one of them, and I'll admit he played the villain very well. But the heart is a funny thing, and if you've got enough experience looking, it's easy to see when someone's heart isn't in their actions. Itachi seemed that way, to me, so I did a little digging." "Why?" Sasuke demands, the word bursting out of his throat before he can stop it. He grits his teeth in frustration, but the confused fury beating in his blood pushes past the block with ease. "Why would you bother?" The red-haired man looks up at him for a long moment, his blue gaze steady. Then he sighs and leans back on his hands, turning his eyes on the gathering clouds above them. "Because of what he did to you," he says at length. "Because I know how it feels to be betrayed by the person you love most, but to keep loving them anyway." Sasuke wants to deny that he loves his brother even now, wants to shout and scream and tear into the man for even thinking such a thing, but his voice is trapped somewhere down in his chest and he can't even begin to speak. The red-haired man seems to hear the objection anyway, because he casts a faint, sad smile at Sasuke. "There are always many sides to everything," he says almost gently. "You know one, Sasuke-kun, but what will you do if there are others?" His shaking, Sasuke realizes numbly. There's a fine tremor running through him, shaking him from head to toe, and it's ridiculous, because Sasuke hasn't shaken from mere words since that blood-drenched night half a decade ago. He's stronger now, maybe not. Enough so to kill his brother but still strong, and this shouldn't. But it does, and Sasuke sinks slowly to the ground, FSTNG his hands in the fabric of his pants as he tries to keep himself under control. He still killed them, he rasps, almost unconsciously. Even if he had a reason, he still killed them all. I can't. Slim, strong fingers curl gently around the back of his neck, gripping carefully, and Kurama pulls him forward, letting Sasuke's forehead rest against his shoulder. The bare skin is warm, and the lines of the seals are almost dizzying this close up. "I know," Kurama whispers, and the ache in his voice makes Sasuke think that he really does. "He's your brother, but he still did something horrible and unforgivable. He took everything away from you, and regardless of his reasoning that wasn't right. I'm sorry, Sasuke." Those 3 words are something that Sasuke has heard countless times since that night, repeated again and again by stupid, toadying BSTIs who just want their chance at having influence with the last Uchiha and his fortune and power. But coming from this man, with his scars and his lost village and his perpetual smile, it almost sounds honest. It almost sounds real. Sasuke doesn't pull away, even when Kurama carefully loops an arm around his shoulder and cards cautious fingers through his hair. The Jounin smells of sweat and metal and the faintest hint of mountain winds, different from anyone who's ever held Sasuke before, but that's comforting. Kurama isn't an Uchiha, and somehow, for some reason, Sasuke wouldn't ever want him to be. Just being Uzumaki Kurama is enough. For a moment, just one brief moment in a clearing empty of all but the 2 of them, Sasuke feels like he can breathe fully without the weight of hate to drag him down. He draws in a breath, another, like fire down his throat, and closes his eyes. Kurama's hand settles in his hair, gentle and kind, and Sasuke keeps his eyes shut, trying to hang on to this feeling. He's been an avenger since that bloody night, has lived solely to kill the person he once loved best, and is tired. The mere thought that there might be a reason he doesn't know, an explanation for the obliteration of his entire world, makes him feel empty and aching inside. He loves Itachi, but he loathes him. He doesn't want a reason, but he does. He wants it more than anything. He's never wanted anything less. Sasuke doesn't cry, doesn't sniffle, never even moves, but Kurama knows Sasuke's grief when he sees it. The boy doesn't move away from Kurama's embrace, though, stays within the circle of his arms with an unspoken and unacknowledged sort of gratitude. Kurama says nothing, either, just holds him the way no one has since that night 5 years ago. He's thrown Sasuke's world into turmoil and knows it, knows the effect such things will have on a boy who has never looked at the massacre as anything but a tragedy enacted by one person. Sasuke has never not blamed Itachi, and Kurama knows that even if Itachi is declared innocent, Sasuke will have a very, very long way to go before he can even begin to forgive his brother. But that's all right. A slow march towards forgiveness is far better than having any chance for it ripped away without warning. At least here, there's a slim chance for Itachi's return and a greater one for his survival. As long as that remains constant, Kurama will be satisfied. He's always been aware of how much Sasuke, both his Sasuke and this version, worship the man, but nevertheless he can't bring himself to respect Itachi. Perhaps he was given an array of bad choices with no good ones to be found. Maybe he was backed into a corner with no way out, but still. To kill his entire clan, regardless of Obito's then less than sane assistance, to willingly kill so many, Kurama can't like him for that. Surely there was another choice. Surely one could have been made that did not shatter Sasuke into so very many broken pieces. Sasuke takes a breath that shudders ever so faintly, and Kurama tightens his arm, pulling him just that much closer. The body pressed against him is so slim and frail, a child's yet developing form, and Kurama finds it hard to connect this grieving boy with the strong and steadfast man he left behind. The vast majority of his heart belongs to his Sasuke, dead and forever gone, but there are other pieces left, smaller though they might be. Naruto has already claimed several, and Gunma and Reidu, the Sandaime, and Yugao, and certainly Sakura and Kakashi. It's only right that this Sasuke, different as he is, receives his own piece. Sleep at my apartment tonight, Kurama offers on a whim. He feels Sasuke stiffen in his grasp and chuckles, because his Sasuke or not, the thoughts behind those sharp dark eyes are easy enough to guess. It's not pity, Sasuke-kun. My best friend in the entire world was an archer, and I know he wouldn't have approved of you living in the compound alone. Just for tonight, humor me and let me respect his wishes. I promise I won't even make ramen for dinner. Sasuke huffs, but he still doesn't pull away, and his forehead stays resting firmly against Kurama's shoulder. There's no sound for a long moment, and then he mumbles something. Very likely it's something Kurama was never meant to hear, but enhanced ears pick it up regardless. Run, isn't that bad? Kurama grins to himself, relieved and pleased, and a little triumphant. Not so bad indeed. Oh, beware of silliness. You're going to have Kurama spar with Guy? Genma. Genma simply grins at his partner, glancing away from the pot of miso he's stirring. Come on, Rai, I've got a feeling about this. Just trust me. Reidu gives him a black look. Genma. The last time you said that, we were arguing about which bundle of senbon you had poisoned. You stuck one in your mouth and spent the next 12 hours debating the state of fire country politics with your nightstand, in between attempts to fly. Izumo and Kotetsu still twitch whenever you start talking about colors. Genma doesn't even have the decency to look abashed. He just snorts. So that's why they bolted from the room when I was trying to pick out a new couch. Cowards! Iruka, who's wandering around Gunma's apartment for no real discernible reason beyond throwing dirty looks at Reidu, pauses in the doorway long enough to add, "At least you didn't mention butterflies." That makes Gunma blink once at him, long and slow, before he shrugs in clear dismissal, clicks his current senbon against his teeth, and smoothly changes the subject. I just think that someone like Guy would be a good influence on Kurama. Guy is... No, Reidu interrupts. You are not allowed to have any sort of opinion regarding Guy, ever. You left 3 small children alone with him once. For 3 days. Gunma had a mission, Iruka says, narrowing his eyes at the Takujo as he slides into the kitchen and takes up a defensive position in front of his surrogate mother. Gunma just rolls his eyes, mutters something under his breath that might be "and they call me the mother hen," and otherwise ignores the younger man. Redu isn't about to let the point drop so easily. You were 12, he reiterates, just in case Gamar missed the whole point of his objection. I am absolutely astonished that the village was still standing. Gai is easily manipulated, if you know the right trigger words, Kotetsu chimes in cheerfully, ducking through the doorway with Izumo on his heels. He stares grimly at Redu in brief but heartfelt warning, then whips around and goes to give the blonde Takujo a hug. Genma! Is that tuna I smell? I swear you're part Inuzuka, brat, Gamar says with fond tolerance, looping an arm around what parts he can reach and hugging back, even as Izumo throws himself into the group hug and the two younger men attempt to squeeze the life out of him. Redu sympathizes. Gamar is very nice to hug. It's still aggravating, though, especially when Izumo, who he used to think was the level-headed and sensible one of the trio, gives him a dark glare over Genmar's shoulder. He rolls his eyes and points out, not petulant at all, I still think that spa is a bad idea. Genmar waves him off, clearly unconcerned. Which usually means it's just the type of thing Redu should be concerned about. You didn't see him today. That kid could beat me at speed if he paid attention, and his taijutsu's impressive and unpredictable, Gai's favorite combination. Besides, everyone in Konoha should know Gai. So they know when to run, Redu very carefully doesn't say. Genmar's weirdly protective of Gai, even though the Jounin is probably one of the least likely to need such a thing. Then again, Genmar needs to get a plaque reading Resident Shinobi Den Mother and just hang it outside his apartment. Or around his neck. Really, either would work. But, granted, Gai was his genin teammate, and that kind of thing forges undeniable bonds. Genmar is also one of the few who never even bats an eye at the man's antics, whether from his sheer iron unflappability or immunity through long-time exposure. Redu has never determined and can easily translate from Gai speak to something a little more universally understandable. Fine, Redu sighs at length, because even he knows when to back down sometimes. But if this whole thing blows up in your face, you'll be there to say I told you so, Genmar finishes for him, entirely unruffled as he sets the plates on the table. I know. The three chicks are all giving him nasty looks now as they slink into their positions around the table, overprotective as ever in the face of anyone even attempting to argue with the man who took them in. Redu sighs to himself as he picks up his chopsticks, resigning himself to a meal of dirty looks and conversation where he can't get a word in edgewise. In this kind of situation, aren't the stepkids supposed to live in fear of bringing their new parents' wrath down upon them? And why is this even his life? Aren't they all adults here? Then a gentle hand touches his shoulder, and he glances up just in time for Genmar to brush a soft, glancing kiss over his lips and set his dinner down in front of him. Eat up, he orders with a smile, and Redu knows he looks besotted and stupid right now. Aoba has told him many times, at length and in great detail, but he doesn't care. This is family, and this is peace, and maybe just a little. He can understand how Uzumaki Kurama is still able to laugh and smile here, even after the complete destruction of Uzushio. Konoha is far from perfect, but it's still home.